Hello everybody and welcome to our Policy Review Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, March 14th. The agenda is incorrect. It says January 30th.
That's all right. We can amend that.
2012 at 7:30 p.m. We are going to be discussing, well, before we go anywhere, I'd like to mention what this committee was formed in December to review all of the district policies and recommend changes to the full board, and the board would then enact the policies if it agrees with the changes we make. We have no authority to change policy on our own. Only the board can do that. We can only make recommendations. I was going to go through a list and tell you what we can and cannot do, and I was going to welcome everybody to the meeting. We have we have a new face here in the front row, and a new face over here. We have security. Like I said, we can't make any immediate changes, and we're working on revising all our policies. Now, tonight we were going to take a look at the policies. First, we're going to look at the local board procedure policies that the full board has sent back to this board to consider changes for that there's been some resistance to on the board level. And then from there, we're going to go on and look at the racism, bullying, and harassment policies. We expected to have some more members of the audience come out, members of the public come and voice their opinion on some of these policies, but not seeing.
All I can say, maybe they thought it was at the middle school, and they'll eventually start to filter in. So let's just.
It was advertised as being here, and I thought we made it clear.
Yep.
You were clear.
Yeah.
Right.
So if they show up, we'll listen to their suggestions, and we'll talk about making alterations to the policies. We can discuss them as a committee if we'd like, and if we decide not to take any action on that, we'll move on to the 100 policies and we'll start reviewing them, which was in line with what we were going to do before all this happened at the high school. So that being said, I guess we can. Oh, and for public participation, we kind of try to keep it just pretty informal. If you'd like to ask a question or comment, just feel free to raise your hand. I think we need to get a roll call, and members of the public, we need you for the minutes to state your name and. Do we need addresses too?
We don't usually do that at committee meetings, but if you want to just enter it.
I think the formal minutes require.
You need the start time on there.
We have that.
Okay, and you need number of people here, and then you need the end time.
Okay, we don't need to get the names of the folks in the audience?
No, you should get the names of the folks in the audience.
We actually
write them down on
there's a sign-in sheet.
Okay, there's a sign-in. Is there a sign-in sheet?
Did we even put a sign-in sheet?
Is there a sign-in
Anne-Marie,
sheet
do you want to just take one of your yellow sheets of paper there and put a sign-in sheet over there?
Or just pass it around and
pass it around.
All right. Well, we'll take the roll call of the members who are here. Connor Kurtz, Chairman, present.
Monica Hamill.
Andrew Basil.
Gary Otto, Superintendent.
Anne-Marie Trainer, Assistant Superintendent.
All right, very good. Now, I guess moving on to Policy 004, which is back to this committee from the full board. Open it up.
And I think we had that placed on the agenda, and it probably shouldn't have been there.
No, this one was placed on the agenda.
Oh, it was supposed to be? Okay.
It came back to us because the issue here was on page 2 of 4, line number 33. This group had decided that 30%, you had to miss 30% of the success of regular meetings. 2 board members on the larger board did not like that. They prefer to keep it at what was here. I don't think there was any other objections to any other changes that were made.
What's that? 04.
Yeah.
We just added down on line 38 as defined by the school board member in question from the district.
Yeah. So I guess what I would just add a comma there after question.
Let me find this policy.
Okay.
Is this on the
That's how I have it. The school
unless
director
detained by sickness or prevented by necessary absence, comma, as defined by the school board member in question, comma, from the district. So I would just add 2 commas in there.
All right. And the 30%, are we going to change that? Because we need 6 votes on the board to change these policies.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, that is in order to change the operating procedures on the board, we need 6 votes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I did not know that. Learned something new.
Now, I'm not sure, just from looking around that table and seeing who was in agreement with the board members who were in objection, I'm not sure if we're going to get 6 votes on this. Does that
Okay.
change the fact that we bring it forward? We can bring it
Oh,
forward.
you got to
anyway,
bring
we
it
vote
forward. You
down.
got to have an affirmative vote one way or the other.
Well, we can also change it and bring forward a new recommendation.
If
that's
the
something
motion
we'd like to
fails,
do.
it goes back to the drawing board.
back
and
to
you bring-
committee and-
bring back a new recommendation.
Or you can just.
Bring the
have to
same
go
one
to
back.
Committee, you can just, as a board, we can discuss it right then and there.
And then make it,
What the
okay.
number is we want it to be. I mean, 30% was decided because you're only required to have 6 meetings, and so if you miss 2, that's 30%.
Yeah.
We have 20 meetings
Mhm.
in a year.
11/22. There's only 1 month we take off.
Yeah, you don't take 1 month off.
So we have 22.
22 meetings in a year, right. So I think the objection was that you gotta miss like 8 meetings in a row before it's an issue. But, you know, you know, to get this thing passed, I'm okay with it being at 2, since we sort of defined.
Maybe we can do 15%. We can cut that in half, which you still get more than 2. But it's not as large an impact as 30. An option, maybe a compromise.
I have on here
By the board member.
define necessary absence. Did we have to define by school year?
No, in other words, we were leaving that to the discretion of the person who was absent.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, to
That was-
justify.
That was the point of that.
The issue that we had run into as a board prior was that certain people on the board were trying to boot other people off the board because they weren't here and because they just didn't like them or didn't like what they stood for. So, not because they were doing anything wrong or anything else, but if those people, for example, missed 2 board meetings, then all of a sudden it was theoretically possible that you could get a majority vote and kick somebody off the board, even though those people weren't here because of business or some other legitimate reason. And so there's a lot of scuttlebutt that was going on about that sort of behind the scenes. And, you know, to kind of quash that, I mean, my opinion is, you know, if taxpayers elected you to this position, it should be pretty darn difficult to get somebody off the board unless they really are being negligent in their duties. You know, the fact that now this issue of what's a necessary absence, that was always sort of a gray area. Who defines what's necessary? Is it the board members who are trying to vote the other one off, or is it the guy or gal who didn't show up for the meeting, who thought it was necessary that they needed to be somewhere else? And so I think the fact that we've defined it
I think that's
by the
helpful.
school board member in question, then as being necessary, then I think that certainly helps in terms of someone missing a meeting.
Yeah.
Obviously, work and sickness are necessary, but, you know, a trip to Tahiti could be necessary too. I mean, everyone's entitled to a vacation.
Well, there's, right. I mean,
I think the issue is if you have
Becomes
somebody who's just
counterproductive
derelict in their,
conversation after a while.
in their duties, and they're just not showing up because they just don't want to be here.
And I think that's all the school code says. I don't even think the school code's prescriptive on how you have to determine that.
In addition to not being able to kick off a school director, it would also be good to get this in there so you don't have that discussion. Because that's not conducive to a good environment for making decisions. Having board members behind each other's backs trying to get each other thrown off the board, that's not helpful. So if we can stop this before it even happens, that would be an achievement.
Well, put it out and see if you get your 6 votes.
All right. And if not, we can go at the meeting and we can.
15%.
Yeah.
Is that what you
Well,
wanna change?
should we change it to 15? Do we have agreement on the committee to change it to 15 from 30%?
Well, let's 4 meetings.
We can do 20.
No, I think that's fine. 15% is fine.
All right.
Okay.
So we're saying you can miss 15% of the meetings.
Yeah. And
Instead
that
of
is a
30,
good
right?
compromise between the folks who think that 2 is enough and then the rest of the members of the board who think that it should be more. Because we are elected by the taxpayers and it shouldn't be acceptable for a group of people on the board who may just not like a school board member to find a way to kick them off. That's not acceptable.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
What, as the public, because you're talking about the board being upset about things, what if somebody from the public or a group of people from the public are
are disappointed in what their person has done, what is not attending, what's the public have the opportunity?
Vote them off the board.
They have to wait till
Yeah, the legal, I think, answer is that the school code doesn't confer any power on the electorate once the board member is elected, other than when they come up for election, you can make your choice as to what you want to do.
And
Okay,
then,
moving on.
yeah, just flipping through here quick on membership, there's some handwriting in the margins where it says access to, not copies. If we can just get that word written in there, typed in, just looking through here. You know do you see what I'm referring to, Mrs. Trainer? If you go to page 3 of policy 4.
Okay.
Maybe it's been updated in yours. I'm just looking at.
I have the updated one that was with the 30% and all those changes.
Yeah, I have that too. I'm just looking at the bottom of the page. I don't know if you can see it. We have written in the margins, handwritten,
What?
access to, not copies of the school code,
Right, it was deleting out the copy of.
and putting
Something.
access
Okay.
to. Do you see? Is it on your copy too?
No.
Oh, okay.
And this policy is also saying, even if you miss more than 15%, it's not due to refusal. So you could technically miss more than that and still not have an issue. That's the way I read that.
All right, moving on. We're going to policy 6, which is meetings. All right, find that here. Okay, here we go. Now there was concern. Now our policy currently reads. I have to find it on here.
The only changes were we were pointing out, we were just pointing out the Robert's Rules
Yeah.
of Order, and we struck out number 2 on page 3. At least from my notes, there was nothing else here.
Yeah.
We wanted to make that distinction.
Yeah. Now on page 1, section 1, policy 6, meetings.
Parliamentary order.
Yeah, parliamentary
Or
authority.
authority, I'm sorry.
It says Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, including small group rules, shall govern the board in its deliberations in all cases in which it is not inconsistent with statute, rules of the state board, or any of these procedures. After speaking with a few other board members, or one in particular, he raised a concern that you shouldn't be able to. Motions should need a second in order to be brought onto the floor for discussion. You can't just have, for example, he doesn't believe you should have one board member, for example, I make the motion to rename the school district, and then a vote would have to be taken on that. You should at least need a second in order for a vote to be taken. And small group rules states that you only need one motion. So if we would like to address that, this is the time to do it. That's always been our practice, but it has not been agreeing with our policy. So we would need to either change our practice to mirror our policy, or change our policy to mirror our practice.
Well, what does Robert's Rules of Order newly revised say? Only one motion is needed?
I'll open it up for you.
The small group?
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's what it says, then you're already doing.
Well, no.
No, what it's
No.
saying is that somebody could say, well, as Connor just said, I make a motion that I want to rename.
And without a second, it can't happen.
And no, according to small group order, then if nobody here agreed with what I wanted to do, then we'd
It
actually
dies.
have to do it. No, we'd actually have to have a vote. Even if
Oh.
nobody else has supported it,
I
we'd still
gotcha.
have to have a vote, 8-1 to shut it down. And
that's a vote on the motion, not a vote on the issue.
No, on the motion,
Yeah.
because I made
Right.
a motion, now that has to be voted on. And whereas if I had to get a second, at least procedurally, if nobody else agreed, then there's nothing to vote on. If
Oh.
nobody wanted to give a second.
Seems much ado about nothing.
I have a note from the last one, on line 4, just the phrase including small group rules. That
Right,
was-
that's on there.
That's already on here
Yeah.
now.
Right, that was where we left the question that we had to come back to discuss.
Now, I can quick read off what the small group rules are. 1, members do not have to stand up to obtain the floor before speaking. They can speak while seated. 2, motions do not need to be seconded. 3, members can speak any number of times, and there is usually no motion to close debate. That's something else, I think. Have we had motions to close debate in the past?
Yeah, we can make a motion table.
All right.
And motion to close debate.
Members can discuss a subject while no motion is pending. When all the members know what they are voting on, having a formal motion before voting is not when all members know what they are voting on, having a formal motion before voting is not necessary. However, for the sake of having a clear record in the minutes of the issue being voted on, putting the discussion in the form of a formal motion before taking a vote is always best. By doing so, there is no question about that's maybe commentary on the rule. But according to small group rules, if everybody knows what they're voting on, you don't need a formal motion. That might also be something we want to look at. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Unless they agree by unanimous consent, members must vote on proposed board actions just like other assemblies. However, a vote can be taken by a show of hands, which is often more convenient than other ways of voting. 7, the chairman doesn't have to stand up to put a question to a vote. And 8, the chairman can enter into the discussion and usually remain seated while conducting the meeting. He or she usually makes motions and votes unless board custom dictates otherwise. So the big things that stuck out at me, one, that motions do not need to be seconded. Our motions do currently require to be seconded.
Where does it say they do, though? We don't have that written anywhere.
It doesn't. And it actually says in our policy that they don't need to be seconded.
That's right. It's been board practice
Yeah.
to have a motion second. And in most municipalities and other boards that I've been involved with, you typically need a second. I don't have an issue with that. We want to add that as a separate sentence, with the exception of all motions need a second in order to be voted on. I think we could add that.
So let's add that in. Mrs. Trainer, you're the one writing down the notes. I'll read off. Let me open this up real quick. Where is it? Here we go. Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, including small group rules, shall govern the board in deliberations in all cases in which it is not inconsistent. So where can we insert that? Just maybe section 1.1, all motions require a second.
I think you just, under
Just the
parliamentary
last
authority, you just put another
last
sentence in
sentence.
Yeah.
there. Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, including small groups rules, shall govern the board's deliberations in all cases in which it is not consistent with statute rules and state board means procedures, with the exception that all motions will require a second
All right.
Before a vote.
before vote.
And then the other issue raised by another board member was the fact that the idea that a board member, if he didn't, just to stall the meeting, he could filibuster on a topic because you could speak at any time. I don't know if that is a concern.
Well, I think you can do a call to question
You should, yeah.
under Robert's Rules of Order, small groups, and that forces it to a vote.
Yeah. So I don't see any problem with keeping Robert's Rules of Order, small group rules, the line stating that discussion can occur without a motion being on the table. Because I think that fosters better dialogue, and that's what we need. We don't need tactics to get motions passed that may not pass otherwise.
Well, quite frankly, you can shut somebody up by saying, I make a motion that we do X, Y, and Z.
If somebody's abusing the process,
and that's it. Yeah, you can move forward with a vote.
So we're in agreement that we will not take that out of...
Yeah, I don't think we need to take it out now.
Okay, so the only change to Policy 6 is that we require a second on all motions to be voted upon.
So,
Yes.
so that
All right.
is needed before a vote.
Now, so we got those changes, and they will go up now for a first reading.
Yeah, they'll go back.
Yes.
All
Well,
right.
we already had a first reading.
You can still, in the process of first, second reading, make revisions.
Does that mean at our next board meeting, we can vote to approve these?
Yeah, if everybody agrees to
We
it.
haven't had two firsts on these yet, right? We've
We had a
one
first reading,
And then we had the
then you need a
second.
second reading.
Right.
And was
So anything can happen between the first and second
Right,
reading
you're
until the formal vote on
We
it.
haven't had the second reading on these.
So the
because
second reading will show the change you made tonight.
Okay. Now, at our voting meeting at the end of the month, are we going to be voting on the other policies that we've changed from a while ago? Because it said on the agenda for the Committee of the Whole, the second reading, that was the second reading.
Yeah. And
Yes.
So does that mean at our voting meeting this month, we will be voting on those
You'll
changes?
actually be voting on those now.
Okay.
Correct.
Those were just to post for review, still under review. The last point of review is the 26th when we vote on it.
Okay. All right, so now we are done.
Somebody could table them.
Yeah.
I mean, that could happen, then they would go back into the system for another second reading, but if nobody tables them and they need, your 000 policies will need your 6 votes, and the 100s will need just a majority.
All right. So we are done looking at those policies. Now on the agenda, we have review policies and administrative guidelines relating to the recent incidents at the high school. That would be racism, bullying, and harassment.
Can I just ask a point of clarification. We still have off the table then 010,
Oh, no.
Yeah,
which is fine. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure my notes are the same.
yeah, I mean, that one's here. There was too many things about that I just didn't like.
I did go on PSBA. This is verbatim.
Yeah, I
Someone
know.
had questioned whether or not, what's the difference between what they use as their standards and code of conduct and the policy. The policy is verbatim.
Yeah,
what's
no,
on
I
the
know.
website.
I know. I just think it gives too much power to PASBA.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we should have a code of conduct of some kind, and maybe I think this is something we still need to kick around and bring back at some point, but
This was, and you need to know that what we did when we did our policy review, we noticed that other districts had this, and administratively, it was our thought to bring this forward. If you don't want to
No,
use
it's a good
it,
idea.
some boards don't have it.
we don't have a code of conduct, and we haven't adopted the code of conduct that PASBA puts out there, and I think we should have some sort of code of conduct and how board members address each other,
Right.
and, all sorts of things like that. However, I just didn't like the wording of this one. There was too much in here that was kind of like
Well,
drinking the PASBA Kool-Aid.
for the sake of moving it forward, can we circulate this to the entire board for everyone to give input and come up with our own hybrid plan?
Sure.
Because otherwise, it's going to sit and languish and nothing's going to happen.
Well, I think of all the ones that we have out there, I mean, this needs to be done, but I mean, clearly we've got some other ones that are a little bit more.
No, I agree.
priority at this point. I mean, is this something we can address in June or July? Yeah, probably.
Okay. That's
You know
fine.
what I mean, I'm not saying tabling it and not doing anything with it. I'm just thinking that obviously there's some other ones that probably have a higher priority. Yeah.
So 010 is on hold.
All right. Is this yours right here, Dr.
Yeah,
Randall?
you can take it if
All
you
right.
need it.
Trying to find those papers, and this is trainer gave me. I just don't know where I set them.
Well, that's everything we talked about
All right,
today.
this is the bullying and cyberbullying.
Yep, that's everything
These
that-
are the new ones. 'Cause that's what I was going to print up to put on the back, and I got them all mixed up.
No, I use a yellow highlighter.
Yeah.
That just means important.
All right, so we can move on now and talk about these policies. Now, I expected to have a larger turnout and some ideas to be brought forward on.
You're going to speak for the group, right?
Well, I'm certainly going to ask, what we're going to put in place, or what ideas do we have to put in place, or what did you come up with?
Well, we have a new policy. I'll let Dr. Otto speak to this. We have a new policy that was actually brought in front of the board for a first reading at the meeting last night, which completely rewrites our unlawful harassment policy.
No. That one's.
Oh,
that
this is
one-
just
that's
an
what
update.
that's already existing.
Okay, which are the ones that we updated from the night?
Those were the 100 policies. Those are the non-discrimination policies. That's not what's at
That's
issue
not
here.
okay. Well, would you like to speak to what we are doing?
Well, to answer some of the questions and the concerns in terms of what kind of policies we have in place, you want to read the numbers of the policies?
Let's start with 103.
Well, no, those don't address the issue that were brought forward by the citizens the other night.
Yeah, I know, but shouldn't we do this in some sort of order?
That sounds.
All right, however you want to do it.
Well, now we're going to review our administrative guidelines. Now we've spoken earlier, and the
Hold I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but are we talking about, I see here we have a revised,
The policies that we were
is this
doing
a
in the
policy right here, 103?
yes,
It's not the administrative guideline?
no, it's not.
Okay, so you took this 103 here, that's like a paragraph and a half, and we
It was
turned
no longer consistent
and we
with
turned it
law
into an 8-page,
because yes,
policy.
and that has already been reviewed by Brian Subers, and that is the template now that most districts are using for its Title VII anti-discrimination policies. So it's unlawful to. Pardon?
Do you have an extra one of those?
I have a copy here I can give you that I printed earlier.
They were actually on the agenda for the board meeting the other night too, but we don't make
You don't
mass
do that?
copies. Well, I mean, we can if you want a copy. We never know how many people do we anticipate. So since you're here tonight, I'm sure we can give you an
I'll
extra
look at
copy
this
of what we
one.
have here.
What's that for?
Now this page here is
That book doesn't have the revision in yet.
This
That-
used to be the entire policy. Actually, currently still is.
Okay.
This is the policy. It's been recommended to replace that.
Okay, so this is just recommended, this is not...
Yeah, it has to go forward. It takes a few months to change the policy just because of our rules.
Right.
But
But
the
that-
policy that, and if you listen as we're explaining, the policies that we're revising, we're taking a look at our whole policy book. That's why this committee was
This is our
formed.
policy book right here.
It's that book on the table there.
I see.
So we had not revised certain policies for seriously a couple decades.
Right.
And there are some that are just flat, they're not legal anymore. You're looking at one of them.
That was from 1987 and has
It used to be a
changed.
1987 policy. We're updating it to be consistent with federal and state law now.
Okay.
And as you read through that, all of those code numbers that you see on the side represent the federal rules and regulations that we have to follow to be consistent with those laws.
Okay.
So back in December as a board, we knew that we had to address our policies. So that's
All of them,
That's
all of the
all.
ones that had not been touched
So
recently.
that's why this committee was formed. We're kind of doing the legwork for the entire board.
Okay.
All right, and then what we do is we make recommendations then to the board to adopt the policies. And the board, we may make some changes to this tonight, and then we go forward to the board, and then the other 9 or 6 board members may say, well, we don't like the changes you made.
Yeah.
And we have another,
Back to it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's-
Some of the policies, there's not a lot of board deliberation because they're cut and dry.
Right.
It's kind of prescribed by federal law.
By federal law, right.
I mean, Title VII is an anti-discrimination law, so you have to follow it. I mean, you can make some changes in the wording, but you
Law
kind
of
of...
state, right?
Right, you have to do what you have to do.
Okay.
It's not really a local policy. So that's what we're talking about now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It can be tedious, so feel free to
Oh,
ask
yeah.
questions.
All right.
Connor, the 103.1, all of the forms in there are actually the forms that we currently use here at Boone that was approved when Mrs. Mikowski had her most recent audit.
Okay.
So what we did instead of taking sample forms was just to use what we currently have since we were in compliance.
All right.
And then Mr. Subers took a look at 103, 103.1, and 104 to make sure that with the most recent changes to special ed law, IDEA, FERPA, 504 plans, and that everything was worded the way it should be and made the corrections for us.
Okay.
And if you were to look at the policy for this in Exeter or Pottstown, Pottsgrove, anybody that uses this same system, it's almost going to be worded identically the same because it's based in federal law.
Well, and this actually looks like it follows more closely 229 to 324. 328.
Absolutely. It's the same kind of process. Yep.
And it's also convenient because it puts all these forms in one location.
So on the last page, and again for the benefit of the public, if you're looking at these, those are all the laws that it's based on page 7 of 8. You can see there it's based on the school code, it's based on the state board regulations, Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, No Child Left Behind. I mean, it cites everything. And that's where we get the legal authority to pass a policy like this. And the federal government and the state government want you to have these in place for the very reason that they're listed. So there is a practice of non-discrimination based on those things. So Title VII, if you're familiar with that, it's illegal to discriminate in schools regardless of race, color, age, creed, religion, sex, sexual orientation, ancestry, national origin, marital status, pregnancy, or handicap or disability. So all of those groups of people are protected from a legal standpoint by this kind of policy.
Now, I don't know if now is a good time to talk about the Pottsgrove policy. No,
Well, let's
Phoenixville.
just,
Phoenixville?
I think let's just go
'Cause
through
I think-
these 100 series
All
first, and then we can, try to address the gentleman's questions and who else ever has questions. But 103, 103.1, and 104, we believe will answer the questions that need to be answered and bring those policies up to speed. They were long overdue. It's time that we changed them, and the wording will be consistent. They're already, we were already practicing this, we just didn't have it written down, and that's not a good place to be. So it's important that we have, and just again, for the public's benefit, on page 8 of 8, should anyone feel that they have been discriminated against, that form is the process that they would follow in terms of lodging a complaint. And within the policy, it tells you how the investigation actually takes place. That's step 2 on page 4 of 8, and then step 3 talks about the report. So it's all very spelled out and very specific as to how the district is supposed to implement this policy. And we've had some complaints in the time I've been here, alleged discrimination of, most of it has been on the basis of disability at this point. So it's there to protect all of those things.
One of the things I've noticed when I've been reviewing the various different policies, where obviously a student or third party is encouraged to report an incident, an employee shall report an incident. What happens if an employee doesn't report an incident?
You mean if there is a case of non-discrimination by an employee, or?
What I'm saying is,
I'm not
if
understanding
an
your
employee
question.
witnesses a discrimination or harassment, I mean, depending on the policy you're talking about, the language is all the same.
Right.
Are they mandated reporting?
Well, it says here,
Policy
they
says
shall.
Yeah.
If you witness or whatever, or you're notified of it, or you suspect it, you shall report it.
Well, I would say this, if it's
So-
found out that someone had privy and knew of certain violations and discrimination and it's not reported, and we find out it's not reported, that would be a cause for action against us, saying that they're not fulfilling their job responsibilities. And it may subject them to legal, it may subject them to whatever the penalties are under this law for failure to report.
Well, I think it's a good thing. I mean, it's just one of these things where, I think everybody, and I don't know to what degree it's hammered home to the employees of the school district, whether you're a teacher or a janitor or an administrator, you have I don't know how to describe it, you have an active duty to report. You can't be an innocent bystander and stand idly by and not do anything, or if you're aware of something that happens. You have an active obligation to report something when you see it.
Let's say,
Is
can I,
that by law or just by?
Well, this policy says.
Yeah.
No, it's by law. I can
By law,
speak
so
to
they're-
the professional staff.
Mhm.
One, it is in their handbook, but I could read that. But as we do new teacher inductions each summer and we bring on our new staff, there's actually a law pamphlet that completely spells out what is discrimination and harassment and your responsibilities through it. And we walk through that, and the mentor always goes through it with them also. So they get a document, a brochure.
now let's say a student were to, let's say, use the N-word in the hallway, whether some kids joke around with it, which is unacceptable in itself, and if let's say a teacher witnesses that would be, I think that is discrimination, using that word. Would
Well,
that be?
it's a number of things. It's
Right.
unlawful harassment, as we're going to see when we
Unlawful
get to
harassment.
it's discrimination.
Yeah.
It's
Now,
a number of things.
Now, if a
And you
teacher,
can file against their professional code.
so if a teacher saw that and didn't report that, or didn't correct that student, that would be a violation.
That would be
The
the-
violation is not reporting it to the authority that they are accountable to, and that would be their building principal.
Okay, so I think that needs to, because I know there are things that are said in hallways, and there are teachers within earshot, and the teacher just sometimes will turn a blind eye or not listen, because I know I've seen it. So I think that really needs to be hammered home. That if you hear that type of language, or you witness something of that nature, you have an obligation to report that, because that does not. Speaking of to the concerns that were raised at the last board meeting, that is not conducive to a healthy learning environment. That language.
Well, I think just as we have a litany of things that I've given principals over the years that have to be part of their opening day presentation to their entire staff that they need in August, that probably needs to be added to
Yeah.
the list.
Maybe an email can be sent out district-wide. If you witness anything that is harassment, you have an obligation to report it, just as a refresher and to staff
Well,
members.
We could have them
I
go
would
back
make
to
a
the handbook.
suggestion, not an email. There's a number of people outside the professional staff that don't open emails. But what we've done, like with badges, with a number of different security information, we put it in their pay stub.
Okay.
Do pay stub mailing. I can pull it out of the book that I give to the professional.
Just make them know that they have an obligation to report all of this.
I think that's, we're moving sort of beyond the scope. I'm sorry I opened the can of worms here of this committee. I was just kind of curious because, if you have an active duty to do something when you witness it, whether it's discrimination or harassment.
Well, shall says it. That one word says it all.
One word says it all. You haven't, and maybe people don't realize
it's not a choice.
that hey, I don't want to be involved. Well, you don't have a choice. You have to be involved.
You can make the case, and not that I don't disagree with you. You may think someone heard something, maybe they didn't, maybe they didn't. But it's pretty obvious that does go on, and it needs to be addressed if it's found. It doesn't even
have to be a racist comment. It could be a sexist comment. It could be a whatever it is.
There's a lot of name calling that goes on with
harassment. Harassment,
just,
as far as I'm concerned,
right.
and it doesn't matter whether it's based on religion or race or ethnicity or gender or anything else.
No, there's some unfortunate name, especially I hate to say it, with a lot of the special needs kids that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think most kids are sensitive to that, but sometimes people make fun of them, and it's just not right.
Well, this goes down as simple as playground inappropriate activity, not the tattling or not the common things, but it differentiates. That just points out, if you see this is the reportable piece. So we can make it an annual, we call it a payroll stuffer.
Yeah, because I honestly think, how much of that do you think happens in the cafeteria, going through the cafeteria line?
Look, there could be a custodian who's doing something and he hears it,
absolutely,
or she hears it, and they may not think they have a duty, but
they do.
According to our policies, they probably do have a duty to report that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it needs to be driven home to all employees of the school district, even volunteers of the school district. And that was one of the other things that sort of came up with all these policies. Our volunteers, it doesn't seem as if sometimes we refer to staff, sometimes we refer to employees. And a volunteer is not paid, so they're not really an employee. But are they staff? And if they're not staff, then we need to call out volunteers in these policies as well, right?
I think anybody that we allow to interact with kids, we have a responsibility for their behavior.
I think you would call them a staff because you approve them. They're not paid, but you do approve all volunteers.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that what happens in some of these policies is in one policy it makes a staff, in other policies it says employees. And so it's not consistent from one policy to the next. And so
maybe we
have to have staff in all of them, or
maybe we make a statement that says,
including,
all volunteers are subject to the rules and regulations of the Daniel Boone Area School District, and that one statement just says it all. So you're automatically subsumed under the guise of any of the rules and regulations of the district. You have to be consistent with them.
We have a volunteer policy, so that's where you put it, and then that covers.
Yeah, maybe when we get to the rewording of the volunteer policy.
That was one of the things that was interesting. Obviously, you guys break things down in the district by, here's the student section, here's the classified section, here's the faculty section, here's the administrative section, and so just having consistency for each of the sections, I think, is important. So
because I would say, we actually encourage volunteer people to come forward and coaching, and I would hope that we wouldn't expect just because a coach is a volunteer they could say whatever they want to kids.
We have extracurricular volunteer and school volunteer.
So when we get to revising those policies, we probably need to include a statement that says volunteers will be subject to follow all rules and regulations of the Daniel Boone Area School District.
It might actually already say that.
103 here just talks about students, right? And then when we get into
No. Then 103 is students in the classroom, then it's qualified students, and then
I don't think I have a copy of the new 104 here, but there it is. Okay, so 104 is employment and contract practices.
Right. Title 7 and 6 also has to deal with employment and contract issues.
Now this says the board encourages employees. Does that also include volunteers?
I'm sorry.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like right here, 104 says the board encourages employees who have been subject to discrimination. Does employees include volunteers? Because you're not paying them.
No, I would put staff.
staff, so we should probably change that to staff.
Yes.
In our volunteer policy, I'm sorry, I just read this. I don't want to distract from this discussion. It says explicitly, under no circumstances shall a volunteer be considered an employee of the district.
They're staff.
Yeah, they're staff.
It's not an employee.
So that's what I'm saying is
We should
104,
insert that.
we should, well, this says employment and contract. They don't sign a contract either, do they?
No.
No.
So we need to find another place for them. And it's because not only could they be discriminated against as a volunteer, but they could also be a participant in discrimination. You know what I'm saying? So somehow we have to figure out where volunteers fit in all of these different policies.
Well,
And-
either that or you could put both sides of that issue in 914, which is just about school volunteers.
Okay. Or, I mean, is there any way, is there a reason why all these harassment policies are broken down into 5 sections, or can you have one harassment policy that covers everybody?
No, they advise that you actually have one for each different class of employees and groups.
One gets very specific just for students with disabilities.
Because,
Yeah, no, I
Andrew,
understand that.
some of the reporting of violations and this and that go through a different process, whether
Right.
it's a student or administrative
Okay, so that
employee.
104, you can't change that to staff, that has to be employees. Because you're talking about contractual obligations there. But I guess the question is where, we got to find a place where we're going to address volunteers.
I think I would feel most comfortable doing it in our volunteer policy with a statement that
What
says
is
there.
that one? What's the number?
914.
914.
Now, I just read here, where was it? Okay, here. Occasional volunteer is defined as any individual who serves as a volunteer without compensation for a limited number of times during a single school year and has contact with students only under the direct supervision of district staff. So if they're being supervised by district staff, that would seem to indicate that they are not district staff.
I don't have 914 here.
I can send you this one. Here you go. And we'd also want to get that wording changed, I imagine, in extracurricular volunteer, because that seems to be for outside of the school day, and school volunteer seems to be for
But they're
during the
still,
school day.
we still stamp them and approve them at the board level.
Which one's extra? Is that like 915?
That is 909,
909. Yeah,
and
I
that's
think
from 98.
the issue then is if you can put a paragraph in under volunteers that
Yeah, I think when we get to
they
that
are,
series.
they're subject to, and you can refer to another policy.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you can refer to policy 103 and 104, but, I mean, maybe Brian has a suggestion for that he
Sure.
can bring forward.
Yep.
Somehow we got to include that
Yeah.
class of,
Yeah, we can do that.
of folks into.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, was there any, did anybody have any other input on 103, 101, 103.1, 104?
I do not at this point.
Only thing that I was thinking of in 103 is the appeal procedure.
What page are you on?
Number 4 of 5.
4 of
No.
8?
What
I
policy?
have 103,
Policy
Policy
number 103?
yes.
Page 4 or
Okay,
5.
There's 8 pages
Yeah.
on that one.
Oh, yeah? Well, this, mine says 4. Oh, that's the old one, okay. So the new one, let me just see if it's on the same page. Oh, I see. Okay, so it'd be 5 of 8.
Yeah, code procedure.
Under appeal procedures?
Yeah, number 2. What would be considered like a reasonable investigation? I don't know why that reasonable just seemed what's,
In other words, you can't just say you took a phone call, and I think that's that kind of language that says
Legal jargon.
it's just legal.
it's just legal jargon. I mean, if usually what it requires you to do is, if you notice, you have to follow it up, number 3, with something in writing. So the writing, what you would put in writing would hopefully, meaningfully substantiate what your investigation was. We had one of these, and I had Brian Subers help me write up what we did as part of our, so it was very thorough.
I think when you look up the definition of reasonable in a dictionary, it says something to the effect of what the general consensus would deem to be yes. And so the problem was if you took a reasonable out there, then an investigation could be anything, right? As Dr. Otto said, it could make a phone call, or somebody could demand and say, well, that's not an investigation. You need to fingerprint people. You need to dip it and go to the other end of the spectrum, right? That's an investigation. So it has to be what a normal group of people would deem to be taking the appropriate steps. And so reasonable, it was.
Most of the time in the situation, we took statements from people. I always ask people to put things in writing, and I don't like to ever take verbal. Like when I'm doing a formal investigation, I very rarely say, if you're not going to put it in writing, don't bother sharing it with me, because I'm not going to share verbal, because that becomes hearsay in court. So if you're going to sign your name on it, put it in writing, and then I'm going to move forward with it. So we'll enter that. That would be part of the investigation, the written statement from the other person. So I wouldn't worry too much about that word. You can't get away from doing a reasonable investigation.
All right, so that takes care of the new non-discrimination policies, all 40 pages of them at least. I guess we can now move on to where would we like to go from here. For the new members of the public who walked in, we are currently on item 3. We're reviewing these not necessarily in the order that is shown.
I don't know, they're pretty standard, 105, 108, 109. They're the ones.
105, 108, 109. What are they?
I think we can dispense with those in 5 minutes and spend the rest of the time on these. That's a good idea. Why don't you talk to those, Anne-Marie, and then we'll move on beyond those.
105, way back in the 1980s, we were one of the schools that got involved in they called it the Johnson City model with the school district. I'm in 105 in New York, and it was the time where the Department of Education was promoting outcome-based education, and so we were into a world of outcomes and so on. And so this policy was written to reflect what was then the driving force from the Department of Ed. What Dr. Otto and I did then was to redefine it in terms of what our new sort of guidance is called Chapter 4. And so this is just a skeletal view of, it's verbatim out of Chapter 4. It's nothing that we made for ourselves. It indicates the requirement of a 6-year curriculum review cycle and all the different components that has to be offered to students. So it just really mimics what Chapter 4 tells the school district that now they're required to offer. So
and you wouldn't have
just
to
update.
Right, you wouldn't have to change it until the state would decide to change Chapter 4.
Well, we need to get the outcome piece out of it.
Right.
That's why we
that doesn't exist in law anymore, so that had to go.
So it's just to make it current.
All right.
Okay. In 108.
Hold on 1 second.
I'm sorry, you did.
I didn't get a chance to read everything that was here for 108. Did you guys email this to us?
Yeah, I'm trying. Do you have a copy? Can I see Mr. Frank Romero's copy? Did you guys have a copy for him?
No, you said I didn't.
All right, I don't know where I don't know.
No, we didn't put these out to anybody yet. We
Okay,
just,
this is because I was saying, I was like, I didn't see this.
These are
Did I
just,
get a manila folder?
and we don't have, these are just the review process. They're not on any agenda yet. They haven't been put out for the board to look at yet.
Okay, because I'm trying to figure out where.
Anne-Marie, these haven't been on the agenda yet, have they? For a first reading?
Yeah, I thought they were.
They were on for a first reading?
I don't know if we did all. I don't know if we went up to 105. Let me open up. Maybe they were. I'm looking at the other one.
That's what 105, 108, 109 was, and then we took 110 off.
Let me open up my email. Oh, not email. Agendas.
Yeah, you may have already received these with the board packet, Andrew.
It's like 2 months old now.
Is there a way we could be, I don't know, like just send email files of all these? It might be easier to open them up then rather than going to the board meeting.
Yeah, Andrew, you had asked the question. I have to check with Mrs. Barr. I thought we were working on getting them all into one PDF file, the way Mifflin does.
I mean, part of the, like when you guys send out, it's kind of nice when we get an email that says, okay, well, look, here's the agenda. And if the attachments were attached to the agenda, like that email, makes life a lot easier. Otherwise, I got to go to the website, and then I got to pull down the stuff that's on the website for the meeting.
So maybe
and
we
that's
can
like
start-
a 3-step process.
No, I know it is. It's
And if I'm not in my office or someplace where it's accessible, then I don't pull it down, and then like 4 days go by, and then it's like, oh crap, I got to pull it down. I don't have time to read it.
I have them here, Mr. Basil, on the agenda.
But they were on the
Apparently, I've got it here.
Oh, okay.
I haven't had a chance to.
I would just suggest it isn't one massive email because we did a couple things in the guidance department, and I sent out when we were doing the new child study document. And people say print and don't realize there's like 50 pages.
Yeah, right. No, I
So
get it.
it would really be better to do each as a separate
That would be
PDF.
fine. That would be a good idea, I
Because
think.
otherwise, people don't say 6 to 8 of
Yeah.
57 pages.
Like just an email, we can click, if we're
Right.
talking about policy 105, we click 105.
I'd actually like to have it done one of two ways. So, if you want to send them out in piecemeal, that's fine. But like, I'd like to have one email that's got all the policies in it, so that I can sit there on my laptop and just pull them down by bookmark. You know what I'm saying? Oh, we're talking about 105. There it is. I don't have to go to a separate file and scroll down and find.
And we talked about putting on the website the current policy manual, mainly for the people who come to these meetings. They can put it on like their iPad or something. They can bring it in and they can look at it.
It is on the
They're open. They're individual files.
We lost a lot of paper just with that guidance initiative by people not realizing there was 87 pages to the
Yeah.
document, and they said print, thinking they wanted the first 4 pages, and that was it.
Like,
And-
this
What
is-
you could do is you could put the one that's one big file as a read-only file,
That's right,
and so that they can't
That's
print it.
true.
right,
And if they want to print it, they got to go to the individual
right.
files.
And I've done that with the strategic plan, maybe
Yeah.
just a read-only.
Because it is a lot of paper.
I was suggesting not for printing, but put it on the website for the public, so they can see, so they can just scroll through. They don't need to open up, for example, policy 105, 106, 107. They can just scroll 105, 106, 107. Not to print, just put it on the policy page.
Sure.
That's it.
Now or when you're finished with the initiative?
Well, it was my rationale earlier when I mentioned this at a previous meeting was to put it up now so people who wanted to come in the audience and follow along could just scroll. If it could be updated, I'm not sure how much time it's going to take to put these together. I don't want to
For
waste.
Scott to keep doing it every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know if that is.
No, I don't think. Look,
No,
as
that's
we're
what-
doing this, I think whatever current version of our policy that we have, let's get that
Yeah.
up there, right?
Right.
And you can make that available as a read-only file. I, as a board member, would like to have it just so that I don't have to carry this thing around with me anymore, and I don't have to pull these things down
Right.
one at a time. And as we change these things, then at the end of the process,
Yeah.
we can put together one big file.
And that's also convenient. Having one large file is convenient. Control F is searching for a particular term if we
Correct.
want to discuss.
Correct.
Just have a date on
Discuss
it.
something.
I'm
Yeah.
just concerned about the...
Have the
printing.
version, whatever the date is.
Yeah, if we put
Well, we'll put it up now, and then when you finish policies to move on to admin guidelines, then we'll rerun
The 100
policies.
Yeah,
section.
that sounds
whatever
good.
it is. Yeah,
Okay.
All right. So looking through this,
Which, we're on,
105.
okay, yeah, I read it. I'm okay with 105, the changes you guys have made. I mean, for the most part, my only concern was where it's
For the
talking about,
benefit of the public, so what are we talking about with 105?
curriculum and development.
Okay.
And my issue on that particular policy was it was saying growth, and I don't think growth is necessarily improvement, and you guys made the change that word.
Growth
from-
came with outcomes. It was just part of
Yeah.
the movement at that
Right.
time.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's really just a procedural. That's nothing really.
Right.
Yeah. All right. And then 108, lesson
108
plans?
was taking out things that are no longer even part of the instructional process, that were outdated, cassette tapes, film strips, transparencies, things that aren't even used anymore.
Did you guys do anything with 106?
Not yet.
What's 106?
It's adoption of courses of study. It's from like 1991.
Oh,
So-
no, but we did have the conversation now that we no longer have options, we just get them directly from the state. because the state now gives us a set of standards for each course, for each grade level. And so we're waiting until Common Core comes out, and then we'll find one where the wording would match that. We'll bring it back.
When the Common Core comes
The
out?
Common Core standards are now being adopted by the Department of Education, and they're in draft format. Once they're finalized,
The
then they
state's
have a
going through another
direction.
revision of
So
how
this
they're.
is pending until,
When I get something finalized from the state, I'll bring that one back.
All right.
Oh, it's just on hold.
Or we just have to we'll have to do it twice in a year, so you might as well just do it.
okay, so 107 we scrapped, oh, wait a minute. 107, did we even talk about 107? Do we want to do this one at a time, or do we want to jump to some of these other ones?
No, we only have one or two left.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So 107 is.
108 and 109, the next two you guys want to go through, and then,
What's 107?
well, 107 was adoption of textbooks. And I think some of the comments we had on there from last time were like, 107, section 4C, says textbooks currently in use shall be periodically evaluated. We were wondering whether that should be annually evaluated.
Henry, did we do anything with 107?
Prior to recommendation for approval by the board, the professional staff and administration will evaluate a proposed
We said that
textbook for.
that's what we do. I mean,
So it is our practice.
right.
If-
We evaluate books, but that was back when I had a $400,000 budget,
Yeah, I understand.
and now it's 59.6.
Yeah.
So we basically leave them until we can no longer get more copies of them. Now, in this case, for example, we're looking at a new Algebra 1 book to recommend because Common Core and Keystones are coming out, and we're going to have current content in order for the students to be taught the content that they'll be tested on. So we do constantly look at things we have to change, but for the most part, to be fiscally responsible, we'll write a unit.
Yeah, I guess what I'm just wondering is, because the policy is supposed to sort of stand for all time, you know what I mean? Like, we're not going to be doing a review of all these policies. This last time this was reviewed in 1995. So I don't know whether periodically is the right word as opposed to annually review. And if that's what you currently do anyways, then we're just modifying our policy to.
We could just put a date on it and have it retyped.
Yeah, well, I'm actually
And
saying,
use
can
the
you
word
change?
annual.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
saying let's change it so that at least we know what we're supposed to be doing. And if you guys are doing it anyways, that's great, but as
Well, you
administration
can-
change and,
You can just stamp on there, revised and reviewed, and then that's your new date.
yeah, but I wanted to make an edit.
But I mean, with the new edit in
Right,
it.
with the word annual.
Right.
Right.
Right, sure.
And then 8 was lesson plans.
And
And
that
I
was
think
the-
the issue here was uniformity, right?
That and current practice of instructional materials that they use. We took out the things that are obsolete.
So no film strips anymore?
Who uses a film strip?
I know, yeah. Cassette tapes.
No, I don't know that we have a cassette player that still works.
How'd you guys address the issue of uniformity in this?
Well, they aren't uniform, and there's an expectation based on the grade level and the type of format. They're uniform across the grade level in the district, but they're not uniform K to 12.
No, I get that. I think I was looking at my note, and that's where it wasn't clear to me, and this was the issue that had come up, is how do we ensure that we have uniformity
Oh,
across
they're,
grade level, across buildings, so that the kids in Birdsboro are getting the same, you know.
We have pacing guides.
Yeah, so is that spelled out in here somehow, in terms of lesson plans, so that the lessons plans that are being formulated in APC are similar to the lesson plans being formulated in
Probably
Monocacy?
just do it without it saying that we follow a pacing guide.
Because this says continuity of instruction requires lessons plans, and this I'm just,
And we do. The PSSA test drove us to what we call pacing guides, which really break it out to weekly or unit-type activities in order to make something complete by the end of a year. And everybody in the grade level has them across the district. And then they elementary building principals have developed formats for lesson plans depending on the grade level. You do different types of reading activities in K1, 2 than you would do in 3, 4, 5, and so on. So the same lesson plan format is used all K, all 1, 6, 7, 8 does the same thing. 9 through 12, Mr. McElmoyle works with his staff. So,
Well, I remember this was a big discussion, because, I'm sorry, what's your name? Megan actually had a lot to contribute to the discussion last time we were here, where she said, look, as teachers, we're trying to create some uniformity
Right.
across the different buildings and whatnot. So is this the place to make sure that we have that in there, that not only will there be lessons plans and continuity of instruction, but there'll also be uniformity across the
we
school
could add a
district?
sentence. that just-
Because this policy is not in the school code or anything, we can do with this
That's what I'm
whatever we
saying.
want.
I'm just suggesting that
Yeah.
we want to make sure that that's sort of one of our policies or guidelines that we're
Yeah.
always striving to make sure
Absolutely.
that.
For example, in the high
This
school,
truly is a local policy. There's nothing
Yeah.
in the school code that prescribes how you're supposed to write lesson plans. So we can do with this what
for
we
example,
want.
for in the high school now, I believe there's a push to make all. For example, this honors class will be exactly the same. This honors math class by this teacher will be the same as the same honors class taught by a different teacher.
Right, we have a common content document.
Okay, because I understand it's the push now to unify all these different lesson
And now
plans.
they're developing common assessments.
Okay, I'm
Right, we have, my documents upstairs would be what the three of you would do in Algebra 1, let's say.
Okay.
But there was discretion as to your test.
Sure.
And now what we're doing is we're doing common assessments, because that would give us a better evaluation of the course being offered and how, as a whole, students across the course are doing. So that's what the
and maybe how
teachers
the
have been
teachers are
working
teaching
on
too.
now.
All right.
So do you guys think you can add a line in
Sure.
here somewhere in terms of purpose, maybe, that ensure continuity of instruction? The
Sure.
board requires continuity of instruction and uniformity of instruction across the school
Across the
district?
district, at the grade level.
Is there any place from comments from the parents on Monday night where, I know that there was a form sent home, there was a movie at school, I don't know if it's
That's in a
possible.
set of guidelines.
Is it in
Yes,
the guidelines?
that's been
to
there
show
since
that-
the 80s, that you have an option to opt out of something. That's a whole separate set you'll see as we go through the guidelines.
Yeah,
There's,
can I add something to that?
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
I think we would want to take it a step further, as opposed to opting out. Maybe we should take a step back and look at the content of what's being shared.
Yeah, I was gonna actually bring up, is there?
Well,
Just
there's
opting out.
certain books that are used that it has nothing to do with discrimination issues. I'll give you a simple example. In an English class, there's a story that children read that's about someone who dies of cancer, and it's part of a nonfiction book. And the teachers are very sensitive, especially at the grade level, that if you have a family member that you recently had that experience, it may be uncomfortable for you to be a part of that conversation. And so they'll find a different activity for you, and a parent can choose for their child not to be in that activity because it would be uncomfortable for them.
That makes perfect sense.
So that's what, it really does a big broad area.
But we're specifically talking about a film that was shown
Right.
that had, racial.
I'm already on that one.
So
So,
So we want to talk about, what our kids are being exposed to,
right. And that's,
and talk about maybe taking some of those things off the table if they're offensive
Right.
and racially biased.
right.
But the example you gave was okay. We're
Right.
not talking about those type of things.
So it's the guideline that you're referring to, when we get to that part, we could differentiate between the different types of things that they
Because
could
some of
be.
them are totally inappropriate.
Sure. Sure.
Well, I know when the kids were in grade school, parents were given an opportunity to review the movie in which your children were going to see.
Mhm.
And that gave us an opportunity as parents to go into the school, watch the movie, and then know what to expect when our kids got home. And explain to them if there was any questions about the film they had watched, that we were able to explain to our children what had taken place. I mean, I don't know if that's in the guidelines. If
This is
parents-
just lesson plans that we're talking about right now.
Right, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I
that
can't
would-
tell you off the top of my head, though. I'd have to go through them.
Now, Mr.
So that
Schatt,
would fall into the guidelines.
Mr. Schatt had a comment.
I'd just like to know what the current procedure is on, I'm just picking on history now. Say it's a history teacher who wants to show a movie. Do they need any approval other than their judgment must they get the approval from the principal or from the central office, or do they have sole discretion at the moment as to what movie they deem to be appropriate? That's
My understanding is, and I know Megan's math, so she wouldn't be able to, is that it's discussed at department meetings, and the department chair sort of gives the okay for certain movies. At the elementary, movies are all run by the building principal for approval to show. I do know that.
up to the secretary. Is the principal?
I'll have to check with Mr.
Okay.
McMoyle to see what he does with that.
The first step is the principal. I can tell you, I've never had a direct request from someone for me to review a film. So the first step is always the building principal. I mean, that's kind of the process that we use for any of those requests.
So that's the way it is at the high school now, is that what we're saying?
I've spoken to Mr. McEnwell. I know that he has reviewed some things. I know when I referenced the Columbine YouTube that the kids watched after this situation broke, that I know Mr. McEnwell screened that before it was seen.
Maybe you don't understand my question.
No, I think I do.
I want to know if you have a certain procedure for any high school teacher, whether they have the sole discretion of showing something now or on all of them that they show.
I think the answer to that is we don't know.
We'll find out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right.
And the second question I have is, Mrs. Trainer, you talked about common assessments and 3 people teaching algebra, for example, like you were saying. When you're talking about the assessments, does that go the whole way down to daily quizzes, or are we just talking about final exams or midterm exams or unit exams? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Megan has been part of the math department doing it. How far down are you?
We try to have any major assessment, we're starting at the big level, like the
Right.
chapter test, and then we're working our way down to quizzes. It's such a bulk that that's where, we started with, at the math department, we've had common finals for years, and then now we're working down further. The different departments are at different stages, so some are at finals and then unit tests, chapter tests, everybody's.
I've heard from a history teacher that they're going all the way down to quizzes, and you're going to have to quiz not only the same quiz, but on the same day. That's what I've heard.
And
Well,
the daily quizzes.
The PDE is pushing that as part of Common Core. The BCIU has been working countywide to do end-of-course common assessments that the schools are starting to take a look at. But because it's such an in-depth job, what we were doing right now across the district, we've done it at the elementary also, is we'll call it end of year and chapter or unit, depending on the textbook you're using, is the point we want to at least get to with all the different grade levels and the content. And then by department, they're also looking at other things within that department.
And the reason I asked that question is when I retired from Phoenix in 2004, they were in the process of doing common finals. They hadn't had common finals before that. And I was okay with that. But today, I don't think I could teach that, because I think you can carry it too far, taking it the whole way down to quizzes. For example, there might be something extra that I'm doing with my honors math or my consumer math, and the other 2 teachers are not doing that. And I discussed that in class. And I put that on my quiz as an extra credit question. Okay? My understanding is down there, you're not allowed to do that. And I think that's carrying it to the extreme.
Yeah, we wouldn't have that kind of inflexible test.
Okay, thank
No.
you.
And now, most of the textbook come with extensive end-of-unit and end-of-year benchmark testing, that it isn't as tedious of a job. And you, if I just digress for a second, because Tom will appreciate this. The original intent in common assessments by the BCIU was to be able to possibly develop something we bought into as a county that, I'll use Algebra 1 again, that Algebra 1 students should all be able to do, and then submit that to the Department of Education in lieu of taking the Keystone Algebra 1 test. They have now made it so convoluted for someone to try to submit and not have statistical data behind it, that people are pretty much saying we give up. But the idea of common assessments, just so that we know every student is assessed fairly on content, has been adopted by, I would say, 95% of the schools in Burke County now. Yeah.
All right, let's go back.
Back to the videos. I'm still not understanding like how different videos and books will be selected. But I would like to say, as a minority, I think that there should be more sensitivity considered when selecting particular books and movies. If you haven't lived it and you're not from that culture, you may not be able to be as sensitive when these materials are being selected. So I think we need to figure out a way to incorporate people from that culture and have them give an opinion, a viewpoint, on how certain selections of information shared make them feel.
I think that's a valid concern.
Maybe a content advisory board made up of parents or of different ethnicities, of different, maybe that's an
I don't think
idea.
you're saying not content as a course.
No,
Because
no.
we don't even have that choice anymore. It's instructional materials.
Yeah.
is-
But we have to incorporate sensitivity.
Right. And I think we've been talking to an individual now that will, at least to close this year out, is an individual who'll be speaking to the staff about all those types of issues, about all kinds of needs to be sensitive to, whether it's race, gender, religion, special ed versus regular ed. And so we're already starting to work with a consultant that we're going to be bringing in that has a lot of educational experience and also...
No, there's a lot we can learn out of all of
Right.
this, and that's one of the aspects that I think.
Certainly some people do need to be, I won't disagree with you at all. So that will be something we'll need to have them take a look at as they look toward the next school year with their courses. So we've already had those conversations.
And hopefully it leads to a better discussion on race
Yes.
or religion or any of those
Teachable
things, so
moments.
people don't feel like they can't speak about it, right? I mean, I think that's part of the problem too. There's a political correctness that surrounds things, and so some people are afraid to say, well, I don't even want to talk about race because I don't want to offend somebody, but maybe that conversation needs to happen in an open and honest sort of dialogue where people can talk about, hey, look,
Yeah.
you haven't walked a mile in my shoes. Let me tell you about some of the stuff that I've been through. And that person, the other person on the other side who hasn't, can say, well, yeah, tell me about it because I don't understand. And I think right now what happens is a lot of people are like, well, I don't even want to ask the question because I may be perceived as being racist in some way by asking, and I don't think that's healthy either. So this is all good. I mean, I think it's a healthy start to an open dialogue that can hopefully change the way we do things around here and teach our kids. So
I think what's happening is if we, as a district, would look at celebrating culture
yeah,
and diversity, then the negativity wouldn't be so negative.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what's happening. Kids are sitting in classes, they're viewing these videos, they're reading these books which have these derogatory names in it, and what's happening is there's no follow-up from the teacher whatsoever after the book has been read in terms of the names African Americans were called.
sure.
And that's the issue. I know in a district where they have to get permission from either the assistant principal or the principal in order to even view a movie, and it has to be relevant to their content.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Not just to be reading the book, to what is the relevance of
Yeah.
reading this book? Can we read another book and it meet the standards or be relevant in some way other than this movie?
Sometimes even speaking that the relevance of some movies that are shown, at the end of the year, sometimes they'll show a Disney movie with no relevance to the curriculum at all. That shouldn't really be happening either. I mean, at least show a movie that has something to do with what's being taught or what has been taught over the course of the year. So in terms of media in general, it really should be tied to the curriculum, and there should be a follow-up discussion because it is tied to the curriculum. Use the movie as a teaching tool, not just to supplement the teaching.
And
Yeah, and I
that's,
don't
I
think,
think, why this policy was in place, because at the end of the year, and it could be May,
Yeah.
all month, you asked your kids, what are you doing in school? Oh, we just saw a movie. What was the movie, and why?
Yeah.
All day you saw movies? That's unacceptable.
And that goes beyond race, color, or creed. That's instruction.
Completely different.
Yeah, that's just not good instruction.
But,
Yeah.
but, you know,
What movies
at
are you
least
showing in math
also-
class?
I've never showed a movie in all the years I've ever taught. I've never showed a movie, never had time to show a movie, but I can show.
Math is different.
I was gonna say.
Well, I think when the idea of Black History Month, which I don't know if we actually cover Black History Month in our school. I know when my kids came home, they never talked about it. When I was in school, we had it. But we've read Anne Frank and learned about the Holocaust. I've read it at least 4 times, and never once did they come home with a book about a black cowboy or something. You know, it just, so I think
I find that that's a little surprising. I mean, like my kids.
I don't think they do.
Every night they come home, I learned about Harriet Tubman. I learned about, on and on. George, did you know what George Washington Carver did with the peanut? I'm like, yeah, I do. Tell me about it. We have to.
And I don't think any parents don't want, I understand what this lady is saying about sensitivity, but there is a way to teach it, because I certainly want everyone to know about, our heritage, what we went through, as well as, like you were just saying, the Holocaust, and it's things that all races should be taught.
Yeah, it should be
But
taught.
there's a way
Yes.
to teach it, and like Ms. Monica is saying, to make sure that it's just not thrown out there and not followed up on, and so that the kids understand, and it just doesn't, they don't just use it, or it's just, basically in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, it's not a check off on a list. Okay, we
Right.
covered that today.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Good suggestions.
And if you can find a movie, there is one math movie. But it really ties in with history. It dealt with a person who decided to teach calculus in a high school, which most of the students dropped out. And it was an inner city school. And it shows you that there's a way of doing it. And it shows that everybody can do it.
Oh, is that the one about Jaime Escalante?
Yes.
Yes,
There you go.
I was going to say, it was just on.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies. I actually love that movie.
But it's more than a math.
See, I know that movie. I'm not even a math person.
Good.
That was a well-acted movie, too. That was a good movie.
All right, so
Anyway.
move on
Yeah,
to-
movie reviews are done for now. Moving on, what are we going on to next here? Are we gonna talk about 800 records management?
No, I think we should move.
Still on 109.
Oh, we're still on 109. I think we should move on.
Counseling.
109 is just the newest regulations, outlines what we call Chapter 12, which is the newest regulations of what we have to include in guidance. The statement from PDE, and then from that, your guidelines show the different components of it. But this is just the overview that there used to be a different set of guidelines, and it was not called Chapter 12, so Dr. Otto and I just wanted to bring it up to represent the current
Right.
terminology.
Guidance services are covered by state board regulations and school code regulations, how you strategically deliver the program, and then obviously there can be some different facets of it locally, but that's the state guidelines for that.
So that's all that was done to that one.
All
I mean, I
right.
think if I can make a suggestion, Connor. I
Yeah,
think
sure.
we should, while folks are here and they came here to
Yeah.
hear about, maybe we should move on to like the harassment policies.
I think that's where we were.
I think this is supposed to only take 5 minutes, Dr. Otto, remember? All right, yeah. Let's go on to...
Well, that wasn't my fault.
We'll talk about these policies now. That is a good idea. I've included a few that I've thought might be relevant on here, bullying and cyberbullying. Then we have 4 unlawful harassment policies, each covering a different group. One is for pupils, one is for classified staff, one is for professional staff. Then I noticed the issue of school police was brought up at the board meeting, so I included that if we wanted to discuss it. Public complaints, that was brought up. I really put these on here expecting ideas not only from the committee, but
Well,
from the public.
let me just speak to your concern was about what kind of policies do we have. We actually have the policies, and when you reference what Pottsgrove is doing, we actually have the identical policies already in place that Pottsgrove. If you want to borrow these, I don't know if you have copies of them back there. You can use these. These are already the policies that are on our books. Connor, can you give me the copy of those so that I can?
The copy of
The harassment policies.
Let me find.
Do you want to give me mine? I can pull it up on the...
Yeah. Well, let me use yours so I can read from them.
Affirmative action program. I have to find it.
No, she has it.
Okay.
I have them on the... I think these are the ones that have all these.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
So you can see actually these have been around for more than a decade. And to speak obviously to the current issue, it has been unlawful for anyone in Daniel Boone to engage in any, and obviously with the current issue, you see the category of ethnic harassment on the first page, 105. You see I actually yellowed that part out there.
What policy are you on?
We're on 229, right?
229.
Okay.
And if you notice, the references to that are all based on, if you read under the authority, it's titles 7 and 9, if you're familiar with them from the federal level. You see where I am, ladies? On under authority?
What page?
Page 105. I'm just trying to give the overarching law that says we can't do this. Also, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. So those are all the laws that get spelled down then into this policy. These series of harassment policies came out shortly after, I think a lot of this was spurred on by what happened at Columbine. So these have been on our books for a long time. And in response to what some of your friends had said about what went on at Pottsgrove, I actually talked to the superintendent and assistant superintendent at Pottsgrove today, and this is what they use. This is what they based their, quote, zero tolerance policy on. And I went on the website of, and you can have this too if you want to. I don't know if you've seen this. Do you want to give them a copy of that? I didn't know how many people were coming, so I didn't make any copies. I was just going to read from them. But I think Pottsgrove has done a good job with it. Not that we're not doing a good job with it, but I don't think we're probably doing a particularly effective job of communicating that these policies are on the books. Pottsgrove actually has a link on their website that leads you right to these statements. And I'm suggesting that we can probably do this right away. This doesn't even need board approval. Mm-hmm. So we can just seriously take the wording here, make some changes, and make this a Daniel Boone model so that it gets right out in front on the district website.
All right, now you're going to put a little link on the homepage.
We'll take care of it from an electronic point
I'm just
of
trying to
view.
figure out where it'll be on the website, how easy to access it'll be.
Well,
Word policy.
we're eliminating the bullying piece because there's a.
We already have a bullying
document
policy, but
required by
what we're going to do is, if you read what it says there in bold print for Pottsgrove, those are almost the identical numbers that we have in place. So I think if we make that a statement that this is our coordinated anti-discrimination, anti-bullying, anti-harassment policy, this will send a very loud message that we're like taking a look at these things and raising the awareness. Because we don't have anywhere on our website where you see this stand out right away.
Yeah, and I'm thinking we might need.
You have to weed through it.
Yeah, we
but
should.
The other thing that we'll put in place, and this goes a little bit beyond policy, it's more procedure, is if you look at the last sheet where someone will have the opportunity to actually file a complaint, what we will do is, we already have one for bullying, but we will keep this one separate for harassment, which is really what we're talking about here from a legal standpoint.
I have a question. Would it be possible to get an electronic form somewhere on the website? Because that's a whole lot more convenient.
No, that would all be part of it.
Okay.
The bullying stuff is, so we can add.
We can already add. This is
can add
just
this
this is a 24 hour to 48 hours. This can be up and out there.
But the other thing too,
You got my message. Connor locked the cabinet.
It was locked one time too.
All right, well,
I
we
think
can get that
that's
later. All right,
Thank you.
thanks for coming out. So we can do that. Everything that you see here, I think we can do. Mrs. Trainer made a good suggestion. Since you made it, why don't you share it about posting these around the district?
when bullying became the buzzword at the Department of Education 2 years ago, and we had to do certain things, one of the things they required was that a copy of the bullying policy and reporting format be hung in every classroom. And so my suggestion was, trying to find it. Behind you, there's a blue, starts with a logo of Daniel Boone on the top, 8.5 by 14 sheet of paper, which speaks to our mission statement. What I had done in 2008, when we put that together, was to take those blue sheets of paper to Staples, and they're laminated. And they're hanging in every room we have in the district. We did the same thing with bullying, and so my suggestion was this front page to
Doctor it up a little bit, make it look a little
School
nicer.
district, just the statement, it's not accepted, and it will be dealt with, and do the same thing. I had my secretary today call all the buildings to find out exactly how many rooms they have that are occupied in any, even if it's just a library or a faculty room, and I'll do them on cardstock like I did everything else, and have them laminated, and then they'll be hung up as just a statement, as well as putting it on the web. I think it just needs to be put out there that students see it, faculty see it, visitors see it, parents see it, and it emphasizes.
It's a deterrent, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think more than a deterrent, it's a statement.
Right.
It's a statement that this is, if we're saying our mission statement is important to us and we set that right aside of the mission statement, I would suggest to you that's part of our mission.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So,
We'll take care of that in the next,
that is a very good idea.
Love it.
so will Staples when I come under copies.
Now, I have a question. I haven't been able to read that. I read it, but.
I'm just talking about the front pages along there.
and it won't be the Potts Grove worry, we'll make it our own.
Right. We don't give out agenda books anymore, am I correct? Pretty much. I haven't seen one at the high school level.
No, they have the option to buy them because most students didn't want them, didn't use them, and then it was, I believe it's the student council that makes them, you can buy from the student council an agenda book. It isn't what you think of at the elementary and middle school, it have the rules in the back of it. It's like a date plan.
Yeah. Forget that. Say spend money on it. I think somewhere, I think what parents are feeling is that we don't want to go straight to Dr. Otter. We want to feel comfortable. Our kids want to feel comfortable going to whatever the next step is if they feel this way. So, for example, if I as a parent feel like a coach or a teacher did something inappropriate, go to that person, of course. But that may not stop there. Well, what they did was just total, they don't even realize that, or even accept what they had done was inappropriate. Then it's go to the principal. I guess what we want to feel is that we're being heard, it's documented, it's written down. What are the steps that kids can take in plain English, not the legal jargon? What's in plain English if a student feels attacked by a staff member, a student, a coach, anyone? Because often what happens is our kids come to us and they half the time don't even realize it was inappropriate, that shouldn't have been done to you, and now I'm going forward, or, we don't want to come straight to you, Dr.
That's okay.
Okay? And things get done when...
I appreciate that, believe me.
Okay. However, something at the building level...
Well, let me explain for you. We also have here, and I don't know if we have extra copies of it, but already in our district, scroll down here, since 19...
Oh, when you go all the way to the top.
Since 1987 and revised in 93, we've had a chain of communication. It's in writing. Now, can we do a better job of advertising that? That's what I think you're speaking to.
Communication and what's what is going to be.
We can make that more explicit than what's in the policy. We can make a flow chart.
I'd like to say,
it.
I think on this poster that Mrs. Trainer's coming up with, I think it should say, if you feel like you've been bullied, step one,
Where's
go.
the safe place I can go?
Yes, go to the
Let
office.
Someone know.
Yeah.
I know that it's going to be taken care of. Parents are going to be called. Communication again is key. And you know what? I think so many things that I've been through, it would have stopped there. If someone had just communicated that this is what's going to happen, you know.
That's a good idea. I think, Mrs. Trainer, would it be possible?
This is generic to if I'm a staff member.
Zoom out.
I may go to somebody, if it's
Which policy are you talking about?
No, he's talking about my little card that I want to hang.
No, but I think what we really need to be doing is we need to be addressing 903. Because 903 talks about what you're discussing, which is public complaints, and about anything really, but harassment in particular, where it says, you have first level, you got to go to whoever the staff member that did this, right? But I think what it lacks here is it doesn't say who else is alerted, right? So like if a student feels harassed, where does the student go? I mean, hopefully they're going to talk to their parent. But it's going to be a little difficult for a student to talk to the staff member that just harassed them, right? So who else would they go talk to? And so I think that needs to be sort of laid out a little bit more clearly and communicated as a second step, right, to the student themselves, right?
And that's why I think it would be.
I think what happens is I teach my child, I guess, that's an adult. Let me handle that adult. You don't speak to that adult in any kind of derogatory way, even if they say something out of line. That's not for you to handle. So our kids are not going to say to an adult,
sure,
you shouldn't have said that. And then if they do, then they get.
Well, they're too intimidated by that whole process.
They're too intimidated, and then they are ostracized, or then it becomes a discipline problem, and it turns around that this kid did something wrong.
Right, I hear you.
That's where that's just unacceptable, and that's the way it's been. And
well, it's not just with the race, by the way. It's also
everything.
Sexual harassment has happened that I've heard of.
Correct.
The same way.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
That's where does a parent go and they don't feel like they've spoken on it and nothing's happening. Yeah. Now you have 15 parents that have been through the same exact thing.
I think our policy, we're probably not, if I can be critical of our effort, we're probably not doing a good job of communicating our own policy to our staff, and we need to ramp up that effort.
And
that's just being honest.
This is what will happen to you. You can get the union in if you want.
No, I don't think anyone would be stubborn not wanting to do it, as long as they understand it. Where I think the breakdown comes is they're not quite sure what to do, so they make things up along the way. We shouldn't let people float like that. We should be very clear to them, this is what you do.
I don't want to.
That's our fault if we don't tell them.
I know. I like what Mrs. Trainer's idea is with his card. I think maybe if she can include information, like if you're being bullied, read this card. It'll tell you what to do, if that would be possible.
This is a philosophy district-wide for staff or students, so it would be different.
Are you asking what?
I'm trying to figure out, because I want to make it a tool to be used, not just an idea.
You're referencing policies they can look at. If you look on page 3 of 5 of 229, the very letter B, any complaint from a student or staff member concerning unlawful harassment of a student by either an employee or another student should be thoroughly investigated by a building principal. And then it goes on the next page to say, how is he going to investigate? How is he or she? I think that's what you're saying, like, who do they go to? What's going to happen? What happens if it doesn't get resolved there?
The issue is just letting them know you have this option.
Right.
This is what you do.
And in bullying, when we had the whole spiel with bullying piece, that was broken out more clearly. And so I think we just need to do the same thing in the
for everything
that we have
for any kind of complaint
that indicates if you're a student, you would go to your building principal. If it's a staff member, if it's not the building administrators doing it to you,
Oh,
you
yeah.
go to them. If it is, then you go to the district office.
Right, because you could unfortunately be subject to some kind of inappropriate behavior from an administrator.
Yeah.
So
Right.
who you go to? Go to a teacher? Well, obviously that's not going to really matter. So there needs to be a process.
And it's about letting the kids know.
I think that's what you're saying.
Process to follow.
Right.
What's going to happen? I don't want it to just stop. And I'm not saying every little complaint.
No, I know what you mean.
But I'm saying some serious things like
You're talking about
picking up
unlawful
kids or
harassment.
touching kids
Right.
inappropriately. Those things to me are very serious and they need to be dealt with. But I know parents that kind of feel like I voiced my opinion. My kids wouldn't lie about this, and you know.
If I can
nothing
To the
was done.
principal of the school? I mean, I've been there, I know. I've had to go to the principal for different things for my kids. And basically, I always drag in my husband because I want to make sure we're both there so that we're both hearing the same thing. And if they feel that it hasn't gone any further or something hasn't stopped, I personally, as a parent, would not give up. I would keep pursuing it, and if they don't do something, I would go to the guidance counselor. I would go to, I would start looking for ways. I don't know, because I didn't read this policy prior to being here, I didn't know what to do other than go to the principal, take my husband, and then if that doesn't work, I went to the guidance counselor. If that didn't work, I never really made it to Dr. Otto. But then I did
So what we're looking for is some built-in redundancy? Is that what we're looking for?
Well, I think what we ought to do is.
I think that's part of it.
I think what we ought to do is we ought to probably go through 229 here because it lays out the process. And then we can get opinions on how to improve it, right? Because I hear what your concern is, and I'm thinking about it as you're saying that. I'm looking at this and I see gaps in here. And so maybe what we need to do is sort of go through this right now and we can talk about, well, what happens at this step? And we can spell it out.
Can I say this?
Yeah.
You're a parent like I am. I'm not afraid of education. I'm not afraid of talking to educators. I'm not afraid of talking to teachers. I'm not afraid of saying what I feel, what I think. I'm not intimidated in that way.
I didn't get that impression about you.
Community,
I said I didn't get that impression about you.
I'm not. But there are other parents and
Who are.
people
Sure.
that are. Education is a scary thing for a lot of people. And when you come into a building and not one secretary says hello, black, white, purple, green, I don't care who walks through that door, and you're not greeted in a certain way, you're already like, oh my gosh, now I have to go in here and tell on this teacher, and I just feel like no one's going to hear me. And I'm feeling very intimidated, inferior, because maybe I'm not educated, and I'm not.
That's very true.
That happens in the culture.
It
And I'm
seems.
not just saying here.
I can tell you from my experience, the bigger the school district, the worse that feeling is.
It is.
Well, maybe what we need to do is we need to
We
put.
are a service.
Well, what I'm saying is maybe we need to have an advocate, some sort of parent advocate, so that they can go to another parent and say, look, I have to share this with you and I need your help. And that advocate can then come forward and argue on their behalf and see that their case gets put through or whatever the case may be. And I don't know how you do it, whether it's through the parent-teachers group
Association,
or something else. I mean, it's like having a healthcare advocate, right? I
Like a
mean,
lateral party, yeah.
Mr. President, if it wasn't for this that happened on the 29th, I think each individual person had been going through their own
ordeal.
nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay, and never sharing it with anyone. And this is like the best thing that happened.
It was a leap year.
It's a leap.
We'll always remember that.
And so all I'm saying is you're a parent that would keep going forward until you get some answers or some satisfaction. Some of it is just a simple apology. I am sorry. I didn't realize that I did that, or that was, we are not always right as adults, as teachers. And sometimes kids are right. I know not, I have to evaluate me being a parent. I'm not always right. But administration and teachers in the district have to reevaluate this.
it seems to me we need to make it clearer and easier to file a
Easier
complaint.
to understand, and kind of like steps. you know.
Easy to
this,
follow,
if you
yes.
don't feel like you've gotten a satisfaction here,
Go
you
here.
do this. You don't feel like you've gotten a satisfaction here, do this. Something like that, and that can be posted for all I care.
Yeah. Our policy, it's you have to read it, and it takes a little bit of.
You have to digest it.
Yeah, you have to
It's not easy to
digest it. You have to
follow.
vote. I think it would be good if we can get maybe a one sentence. If you've been bullied, go to the principal. If your issue hasn't been resolved, go to the superintendent.
I've seen other districts in their send home calendars to parents that they put on their refrigerators and do whatever that still do that. They have like Excel charts that show. I mean, it's a graphic, for the right brain or left brain, whichever group is into that.
Well, I think it even needs to be, even as Connor's saying, something that you have to dumb it down. It's one thing to have a legal policy that we have to follow, but you also need to have something else.
Well,
and
that's a good policy.
Well, no,
But if you're a lawyer, it's easy to follow.
Well, I think the issue is, we always teach our children, call 911, go find a police officer,
Yes.
go talk to
Right.
fireman. We've dumbed it down for them, right? So you need to dumb it down for a situation like this. Hey, look, this happened to you. This is what you do. These are the 3 things that you can go do to get help.
And I feel
And so
like that
we
should
need to
all,
work on that.
in addition to Mrs. Trainor's poster, which will be posted in classrooms, maybe post that. Let the kid know if you've been bullied, go to the principal. Just so it's accessible and so they can find it easily without having to go through the policies. Yeah, or a counselor. That's fine.
What about those boxes that I know my daughter has used that suggestion box where she
Suggestion
writes
box.
something in and she drops it in the box,
Suggestion box.
and then somebody comes and picks up those suggestions. Who picks them up?
I guess guidance counselors.
Well, there's a lot of things we can do, and I think the point is we need to do them.
Simple, and they don't have to find a form. They don't have to, because I know my daughter. She had someone who was texting her, she was going to kill herself, and blah, blah, blah. And my daughter was getting extremely upset about this conversation, and you got to take it somewhere. But she wouldn't let me do it. She wouldn't let me take it to the next level because she's in high school. So she put a note in that box, and then they called her in and said, what's going on? And she showed them the text, the stuff on her phone. She kept everything, and it was resolved. But I think it was through guidance counseling. So, I don't know if that would be a simpler way for kids to have some place to go.
What we need to do is go back and look at that policy
write it
and
out and drop it in.
I just like
It's
to
a lot easier to go to your guidance counselor than to the principal.
maybe a suggestion. If I can,
It's a lot easier, less intimidating,
Right.
and other kids see you in the present. First thing they want to know is what's wrong. What are you
What'd
doing
you
in
do?
there? And, guidance counselors, they have kids in all the time. They're talking about their work, their higher education. So
Right.
It's a little more. It's
Or the
easier
nurse.
to express yourself in the guidance office.
one option maybe, and I was thinking about this a little bit ago, maybe on the website we can put, here's a comment box, put your name in. If you've been bullied, type in your name, type in your comments. It'll go to maybe the building principal or somebody, and then you'll be called down to discuss it. It would be online. It would be convenient. You wouldn't have to.
I think the issue is there. You're thinking as a high school student.
I am. Okay.
We got to be thinking about middle school kids, elementary kids.
All right.
What are they?
Well, you make it age
they're not gonna get
appropriate.
on the internet.
right. You make it age appropriate to the group.
So we got to figure out what a system works for each level.
Yeah, that might work for the high school. For the elementary schools, we might need to try something different. Just an idea. I don't know. I figured I'd put it out there.
Do you usually have assemblies for students, like first day, some sort of orientation?
Mm-hmm. High school does it by class usually.
Would it be feasible to just have this plain conversation about what's in here at the student's level, that the teacher might even, or whomever, might just talk about this?
It's a good idea.
Things like communicating verbally, you have a better result as something, as opposed to the
Yeah.
website's good and the document's good. But just talking to kids, on their level about these things are not okay.
I think the graphic is probably better for parents to understand it, frankly.
I know.
Absolutely, but the next step would be to
Right.
talk with the
Yeah.
kids, but also we talked about them sitting at home.
Right.
And the kids and the parents should both sign that they do understand and they have acknowledged it, they are aware of these policies, and they know what to do, what steps to take.
Mm-hmm.
In my kids' school, they actually role play some of this stuff. So everybody
Like
gets
Our
up.
guidance
They get up in front of the class. It's like,
My kids
hey,
go to
you.
your school. Where do your kids go?
They go to Wincroft over here in Pottstown.
That's
But it,
Do you foresee having that conversation about, these policies of harassment and bullying, with the student body?
I think we should.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be an outgrowth of everything that's happened. I think we do a fair to medium job of in servicing our students, we could probably improve upon that effort, and this is the beginning of that improvement.
I'm thinking what you're saying, I'm thinking K to 5. Right now, in any, I'll call it a hot topic, important topic, typically the guidance counselor, and depending on the need, a principal goes actually room to room, where it's small group and it's personalized and it's age appropriate by the grade of the students, as opposed to an assembly. And I think so if we gave the information to the administrative team and shared the idea of doing that at the beginning of the year in an age appropriate fashion, I don't think that would be a problem at all for them to include that and all the other things that they talk about. We have a program called Second Step, and it does have what you're talking about. We do it with kindergarten, first and second grade. The classroom teachers do it throughout the year, and it's different scenarios, and you work as a group to brainstorm solutions. And so it might be that a student was harassed, and they'll have the whole talking points to it. And that has worked very effectively, where you bring it out in the forefront, and students get to share with each other and as a class and come up with workable solutions. So I think it could be expanded between that and what else we do.
Yeah. I was just thinking of art, because kids in the younger grades do art projects still, and I was thinking of the high schoolers could put together a coloring book on bullying and harassment and whatever, and give it to the little kids. I mean, as a way to have the whole school integrated into the same process.
Well, we now
like the high
have
school would do all the drawing.
Bullying initiatives K to 5 throughout the district.
Well, I mean, incorporate more of
the
harassment aspect of it in a coloring book that the high schoolers do, and the little kids color. I don't know. It might be a way to incorporate more.
Good ideas, but
Yeah, we can talk about it.
But I think to answer your immediate question about how fast can we move on this, we already have it. So it's just a matter of communicating it, and I don't need board approval to do this.
To understand and simple.
This can just move forward without board
And
action.
you communicate in multiple ways, what Ms. Trainer said.
Right.
With the student, verbally, posting it everywhere in the building, sending it home to the parents, so everybody gets the message in multiple ways.
Yep.
Of communicating this message.
I'm trying to think how I would handle certain things in the classroom. That's what's come up. And I'm thinking of a situation, maybe it's a ninth grade, and there's two students, and you hear nothing. But one student says, "Mr. Schatt, this person over here just called me something." The question is, how do you handle it? Ideally, you'd want to have the staff instructed what's the best way to do it. And that's why I like Andrew's idea about role playing. To meet and you would discuss what you would do. And I'm thinking now, how would I handle that? The way I would handle it is I would take the student who was accused of something, and I would take him out in the hall. And I know you're supposed to leave your classroom, so you still have to be there. And at the same time, I would call my assistant principal or principal and say, I need a principal at my meeting. When that person arrives, I would then have the other student there tell the principal on the side without the two hearing it, this is what supposedly happened, and then have the principal take those two down to the office. Okay? At that point, the principal gets the guidance counselor in and the student who said they heard it and explains what investigate what happened, because maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it's made up. You don't know that. And then at that point, you get that, you bring the other person in, what's being said. Now let's say you've decided on hearing it, and maybe the person who admitted it didn't happen. At that point, the guidance counselor calls the parent. The parent doesn't have to write a complaint. The parent is called by the guidance counselor. This is what happened. And the student who did it that particular day is an in-school suspension for the rest of that day, and then the discipline for that's decided later. Now maybe that's an ideal situation. I don't know. But you want to make it the atmosphere in the classroom that the child has to be willing to come out and say it. Maybe not at that point. Maybe it's at the end of the period to come up, Mr. Schatt, someone says, You understand what I'm saying? Now, I know it's a lot of work of a lot of people, but that way, both parents will be getting a call by the end of the day that they don't have to hear it from this child at home, so-and-so said this to me, and then have to go through all this process. Am I?
It's a good idea.
I think that does happen a lot of times, Tom.
Okay.
I've been there.
See, what I would do, I can tell you what I mean, this is just me.
Yep.
I want a written statement from both writing.
Okay.
You write it and you sign your name because that's your testimony now.
But I don't think that's Tom's job. That's,
No, but I mean, at some point in that process,
that's out in the office.
at some point in that process, I would make sure that somebody gets something in writing, especially if it's a very serious comment.
Yeah, and I think his point too, if the administration would call the parent and let the parent know before the child gets home and, you know, and tells that story, because then we feel like you have a time.
No, that's just good practice. It's called being
You're
proactive.
handling it.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Can I just say two things, because I don't want to be here for about but
No, we're shutting down in about 10 minutes. No, just not Mike meeting, but
Yeah, we'll be done.
Connor has homework.
Yeah.
one thing, and I'm just talking about the high school. Kids get to the high school and we expect them to be adults, and we forget to, at the high school level, include parents. You know, I think when you look at the high school, like, okay, we called you a name, get over it and move on. Okay?
Right.
They're not adults. I still want to raise my child. He's not grown, she's not grown until they can pay their own bills and they're out of my house. I need to know, I want to know. That's the one thing. At the high school level, we have got to stop thinking that they are old enough or adult enough to kind of handle their own situations and things. And so we, as teachers, turn a blind eye. We don't, you know, we're not going to deal with it. I didn't hear that. I don't want to know. These two just called each other. And, you know, I didn't hear it. I'm going to keep on with my lesson. We have got to stop doing that. That's one thing. Secondly, if each teacher, through some of these in-services, are taught how to, and I'm not saying they don't know how to, set the tone from the beginning. This is my class. This is what I expect. These are my friends. You hear that at the elementary level all the time. These are my friends. I don't want anyone mistreating my friends, okay? Same thing at the high school level. For every class that you have 6 periods a day of classes, you need to set the tone from the beginning. This is what's expected. No one will be called out of their names. No one will be harassed. No one will be da-da-da-da. And if anyone ever feels like that is happening on the part of me, administration, teacher, student, coach, here's what you need to do. Setting the tone from the beginning. So some of these in-services need to, the teachers need to be in service.
We already made the call.
Okay, good.
May 25th.
See, now, when you say things like that to me, I remember I taught for 12 years before I dove off the deep end into administration. I would post classroom rules. And not like A to Z, 5 things. And then one of those things would be, we're not going to call people names. Yeah. That's a school-wide rule. We don't do that, and we don't tolerate it. I think it's something as simple as that. Post it in every room, like some of this other stuff. Then teachers don't even have to, just go, you know what, hey gang, number 1, respect for everyone.
We talk about curriculum being on the same page, Algebra 1, everybody's
right.
Teaching, then it has to come from administration.
Right.
These are Daniel Boone High School rules, 1 through 5.
Yep.
And the teachers can come up with whatever they are.
Correct.
But it starts there. They're posted. Now they're posted in everyone's classroom. Mm-hmm.
And we did
started
that.
the day,
We did that when we
semester.
developed the middle school concept. If you go into the middle school, it's on a big board. It's the Daniel Boone Middle School rules.
Right.
And we have, I think there's 7 of them. And so that was the guiding principles from which all classes.
Frankly, I think the students should have input into that list.
That's fine. That's fine. They should come up with
Buy-in. It's called buy-in.
But it starts with administration. These are Daniel Boone High School rules. There's 6 of them. Every teacher goes through these rules.
I call them my non-negotiables.
That's it.
That's what as God is my witness, when I first started in this district, I said there's some things for me while I'm superintendent that are not negotiable.
Right.
And I gave the list.
Right. So speaking of the in-services, will the parents be able to get information on, like, some of the topics or content?
Well, this is beyond the scope of our meeting tonight, but ever since all of this has come to a head, I've been brainstorming some ideas, and I think it's time that we include the community in the conversation. And while I don't have all the details on a piece of paper with me tonight, I'm about ready to suggest that we form an ad hoc diversity committee in the district that would be inclusive of people like you and the community, anyone else that, I mean, I can't have a committee of 50 people, that's not a committee. But I'm looking for people that really have a passion and a focus, that really want to do something about this. I don't want just people that are showing up because it's an event. I want people that are committed to taking this district in a different direction. And I think an ad hoc committee of that nature.
And these aren't school board members we're talking about. These are members of the community, right?
I haven't determined exactly the focus or the quote, the membership of the committee. Boyertown had done this a couple years ago. They actually have a diversity committee. I didn't even know that, but I went on their website today and saw it. So I think, obviously, with some of the travesties that Boyertown has seen over the last couple of years, we can certainly learn from their experience. I used to work in a school district in Lansdale, if you're familiar with North Penn. Very, very diverse population. When you talk about diversity in North Penn, I mean, we had like 15 different languages in the district. Every time we printed a form, it had to be in languages. And I used to be a Spanish and French teacher. I didn't even understand it. So I understand that, and they had a huge diversity committee. So, and it worked. I mean, so yeah, it was a very rich culture. It was a great place to work, and everybody got along, frankly. But I think something like that is the next step in this process. That's beyond policy and regulation, and because you can have all this stuff on a piece of paper, and if people don't get it, they don't get it. So I think we need to. And I'll be announcing more about that. It's probably maybe save it for flesh out the details, and by the time we have that meeting on the 28th. But I may begin to solicit volunteers. The sooner I can get the plan together, the better I think it's going to be. So.
Some of us work. I don't stay at home. So.
Well, no. I mean, and maybe it won't even be you on the committee. Maybe it'll be somebody else. I mean, I will certainly.
Meetings are during the day.
No, this will be an evening kind of group.
Typically, the ad hoc committees work is that, we had an ad hoc committee that was put together to evaluate whether we're going to implement a PIT, so personal income tax. So that was one that got, you had.
This is an ad hoc committee.
Well, no, this is.
No, this is a board committee.
Oh, we're talking.
This is not a board committee that I'm suggesting.
An ad hoc committee. We had one for, let's say, the activity fees. So we had some parents, we had coaches, we had some teachers, we had some building administrators, and we had a board member, or 2 or 3 board members. And so, I think what Dr. Otto is suggesting is maybe with a diversity committee or something else, you have some people from the public, maybe some professionals, you have maybe some faculty.
I will be inviting a student representative.
So you have input from all different sides, and then they can make some recommendations.
I believe in ownership. If you want to deal with an issue, you got to own it. So you're welcome to come and join us if you want to be part of the. You can either sit around and complain about the problem or become and be part of the solution. So that's the way I'm going to move forward with it.
That's great.
That is wonderful.
So I think it's long overdue. So when you say it, the silver lining in the cloud that we had, there it is. So maybe 10 years from now, we'll have had a 10-year history of a diversity committee here. I think we should. I really admire what Boyertown did. They actually have a link on their website. It's called Diversity. You click on it, and it's about their No Place for Hate. It's about their committee. All the committee members' names are there. It's out in the front of what they need to do. So I think it's a great model to follow. There's no sense reinventing the wheel. I think Mr. What's his name? Maristel? I think he's on that. I saw his name on that website.
Newstel Marable. Marable, is that correct?
Newstel.
Yeah.
Newstel, yeah. Mr. Marable is part of that. I don't know if they're still meeting or what they're doing in Boyertown. I don't really care. We need to do what we need to do in Daniel Boone. Boyertown's another community down the road. So,
Dr. Otto, do the teachers in the district get a handbook, like a high school handbook they
Yes.
do?
mm-hmm. Yeah, we have professional handbook.
Okay, so just like you want to know the rules for the students, to have them posted. I think it should be very clear in the teacher handbook how they should be handling certain situations and what they should be doing or what they should not be doing. You understand? And I don't know if that's in your handbook.
Some of that. I mean, I would suggest we can improve that. I mean, one of my other non-negotiables is continuous improvement, and that which we're not doing well, we're going to learn to do better. So that's just a non-negotiable. If we're not doing it well, we need to do it better. So we're not doing well with some things. We need to do better.
So one more point on the NSERFs that are coming up in May. I'm imagining that the teachers will probably be informed or inclined to take what they've learned immediately back to their classroom, as opposed to waiting for an assembly to get the students buy-in.
And we're looking at it to be
They'll take that back.
an ongoing set of meetings with the teachers. It won't be once and done and then in 2 hours and now you got it, go do it.
Absolutely.
There'll be a series of segments to it.
Are your in-services all the kids, all the teachers?
This one will be, it'll be all the staff.
All the staff?
It depends on the topic. What
I would
if it's
recommend,
better
I
in
mean,
small
you
groups.
you
we
could,
do
I
it,
would
but
recommend that
we move
you
throughout the
don't,
district.
you
But
want that
because we have
separation. We can
limited
talk about that
amount
another
of time
time.
before the
I mean,
end
I
of
hate to
this
say
year,
that, but there's a
and
reason
we
I
want
say
it
that.
to
Okay.
be seen as part of an initiative. We want to at least kick it off.
I appreciate that the students will get information on this serious matter as early as May from their teachers.
Yep.
Well, the unfortunate part of that is in 2 weeks they go home for the summer. I wish we'd have more
But
time.
That's okay, we're still doing something.
I understand. I wish this were,
Unfortunately where we are.
if I could have picked the time for it to happen, I wish it would have happened back in September so we'd had all year to teach the kids.
Well, and I'm
But
hoping these will be up.
I wish I could say this, I wish it never had happened.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
But at least we're getting this done in May, which I commend you to
Yeah.
change your in-service to incorporate this in.
well, it's only a half day and but it'll be time well spent.
All right. Any?
Can I just
Yeah, sure.
throw an idea out? One of the things you have.
But that's
on the
beyond, let me
list
just,
is 818.
that's beyond policy.
We do not
That's really not part of what we're talking about.
It was just a policy.
I'll be reaching out to
It
people to
actually
let you know
should
what
be
I'm
pulled
doing.
because
Or what we're going to do, let me say it that
We
way.
have school security,
Okay.
which is a whole different thing. These are folks that have to be in at the courthouse and approved and go
All
through
right.
training.
So we should eliminate that
Years
policy.
and years ago, before the regs came down to do all that, we used to call up some people, school police. But we contract that service because it's more economical for us. So it actually should be a policy that's just taken out of the books.
All right.
And while we have the audience that we have, the concept of a school resource officer, I've actually known people that have done research on that. There's a mixed bag. If you have the right person, they say it can be very effective. If you have the wrong person, it's a train wreck. So I don't know if we're going to go that route or not. I think we need to get some immediate things because that's a budgetary discussion that I have to have with the board. Because when they started school resource officers, there was all this safe schools money that they threw at it. And I talked to Pottsgrove directly, and I talked to their superintendent. He said, yeah, it was good a couple years ago when they were giving us money from safe schools. He said, but now we're having to find a way to bite off the bullet in the budget to keep the person in place. Although they did speak highly that they like theirs because they like the person. But they said that if you have a person that's not as effective at it, it can really be a bad thing.
Right. And how
So,
to measure its outcomes again.
so that'll be on the table for discussion. I think that's more a long-term issue. I think we need to continue to focus on our security efforts and start to ramp up these. Just keep the conversation alive. I really think that's what it's all about.
All
It
right.
starts with, two people sitting across from the table and talking.
All right. Does anybody have any final comments to say? We're going to get this thing closed soon. It's 9:30. We normally only go till 9.
I just want to say I agree with Dr. Otto. If we're effective in this and getting this message out and communicating this, at every level, everybody communicating, and things are moving in the right direction, there may not be a need for the SRO.
And I'm glad you said that. Prevention is worth an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say.
So I think we agree with that.
We're trying to be proactive. I mean, obviously some things slapped us upside the head, so to speak. So,
And I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's always good when we get some feedback from the audience. Sometimes at these committee meetings, we don't get much feedback. So thank you to everybody for coming out. We hope we cleared up some concerns, and we hope that we can put some things into place. and into
Next
motion.
meeting? Talk about
Yes,
that
our next
that
meeting.
process we talked about.
We spoke at the end of the Revenue Enhancement Committee meeting to beginning, not next month, but the next month, split the meetings up. So next month we'll continue, we'll have Revenue Enhancement
That'd be in May.
in May. Well,
Second Wednesday will still be revenue
yeah.
enhancement.
And then we would do fourth Wednesday would be policy review.
That way it backs it up before the
And-
subsequent board meeting.
Next month, well, it would actually, what we're going to do next month, we'll set the meeting for next month. It'll be on Wednesday the 11th at 7:30. That will be the last time we do combined meetings. Additionally, in April, we're going to get it rolling on the fourth Wednesday. So we'll have it on the 25th at, do you want to do 6:30?
I would
Wanna
push
do
it to
7?
7, give people time to get home and have dinner
7?
if they want to.
All right, we'll do it 7 on the 25th. So we're going to have it at 7:30 on Wednesday, April 11th, and 7 o'clock on Wednesday, April 25th. And then it'll always be on the fourth Wednesday from that point forward.
Yeah, I won't be here on the 25th for sure.
Actually, I think that's a conflict for me too, so.
Maybe we should look at...
No, if Mrs. Trainer can be here, I don't know, we'll see.
I don't have my calendar here. I can't commit to
Right.
see.
Well, let's,
Okay.
I mean, it's just
It was an idea,
informal.
yeah, and Dr. Otto floated it at the last committee meeting. I didn't think it was a bad idea. Maybe at some point we want to discuss meeting twice a month.
There's no way.
All right.
Yeah, I think we'll all give a thumbs down on that one.
Okay, then. All right. Just a suggestion. All right, then. So our next meeting on the 11th at 7:30. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Oh,
Are we going back to pick up 111, or where are we
Do you
going
want us to
now?
move forward?
Are
yeah.
we
Let me
going
ask
back?
you a question here, because we got through 109, right?
Right.
And then I had a question, because we pulled aside like 229, 230, 324, and all these other ones that had to deal with harassment. And I don't know if there's a lot that needs to be done. here.
Nothing needs to be done, but
Well,
they're fine as they are.
When I was looking at this, so with 229, it talks about for any member of the staff, and again, I'm assuming that applies now to volunteers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it says staff on page 1. I mean, I like to get out of here with having to get a couple of these things addressed. But when you get to the bottom of page 2, 5, it says any person who alleges harassment by any student in the district. It doesn't say student or staff member. And then when you get over to page 3 of 5 and B, it doesn't say staff, it says by an employee or another student. So I think we need to take a look at those
Use
policies
the same word.
to make sure that,
Yeah, we'll take care of those.
and I guess at the end here, we're talking about investigations on page 4 or 5, where it talks about investigation shall include but not be limited to the following: interview of the complainant, interview of the accused, interview of the other person with personal knowledge. It doesn't say anything in here about a written record of the event being logged somewhere. So, a notification of who?
I think,
The very bottom part.
Andrew, I think what we should do to this, to address that issue, is what Pottsgrove did, where you actually, when you allege a violation under this, it should be a form that gets filled out.
Well, I mean, I think we need to have something here. I mean,
I think
as
you
these
need to
folks
fill out a
just
form.
Demonstrate to us that, look, you can have an event, and then, is there ever a record of that event?
I think-
Or do you,
I'm big on
have
putting-
a series of interviews, and then all of a sudden it's over, and it's like, well, we didn't find anything, and then there's no written record that this was an issue.
Yeah.
And I think what happens a lot of times is you can get multiple transgressions with the same person, but because there's no written record,
I think we need to
that
commit it to
no one
writing.
ever knows that that ever happened.
Right.
And you get these patterns
Right.
that people miss because it's never been documented.
Right. I believe, talk is great when you're talking about something, but
I'm looking at.
I think we need
No,
to
I see all
create,
cases, the results of the investigation shall be reported in writing to the superintendent of schools, but,
And then it should include the summary of the facts, recommendations.
I think this complaint form needs to be a part of the policy.
there needs to be, I think there just needs to be something.
Yeah.
And who else is notified? I mean, are the parents notified? Or are they not?
Okay, but,
It doesn't speak to it, right? If I'm a parent,
right.
I want to know.
Yeah.
That should be way up here under 1, 2, and 3. If there's contact the parents, maybe the first one, as opposed to interview of the complaint. Maybe it's like, okay, well, once you get through this process and you sort it out, somewhere in there should be contacting this, the interested stakeholders. So if it's a parent or guardian or whatever it is, they should be notified. I mean,
And
that's
if-
the argument that everybody here has been making is, look,
Communication.
yeah, we don't find out about these things until our kids come home, and they tell us, and if they tell us.
And
So-
if an employee, if a complaint is filed against an employee, for example, every other complaint that has been filed against that employee should be looked at as well for patterns of this behavior. So that's something that
That's why I say, put it in writing. I'm a big one with put it in writing. You know, I hate to say it, sometimes talk is cheap.
Yeah.
On the 11th.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we need to keep talking about this particular issue.
Yeah.
I mean,
We can
and
start
making
with
whatever
the
little tweaks
229,
to these
3,
things that we need. If you
24.
guys have, so the harassment policies, come together with some sort of form, that you're going to use as part of the policy, like you
Yep.
have with 103, 104, 105. Do the same thing with the harassment policies of 229.
No, it's a good
224,
suggestion. I think we need to keep things in
521.
writing.
It says the district shall annually inform students, staff, parents, independent contractors. I don't know if we are going to stay with just annually telling them about harassment or whether we're going to do it on a more frequent basis. That's just
I think
what
the
they-
minimum is, obviously you have to have a minimum in here, right?
I think you could just put in the word minimally. Minimum, at minimum once a year, that allows us to do it as much as we want.
Right.
It just says annually.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Well, frankly, when you post it on the wall, they're seeing it every
If it says
day.
you're only going to do it annually, then that's
is-
what you're
yeah,
going to
that's a
do. But if you
problem.
say at a minimum,
Yeah.
it's one time a year, then,
Right.
hopefully we're going to do it more than that.
Now, to be clear, these will not be. We're going to be bringing these harassment policies back to this committee to check the changes that have been implemented, which will push the date back for final adoption a little bit, just so we can look at it and make sure all the issues have been resolved.
No, those are actually,
Just
they
to
would be
clear.
revisions. The policies won't go away. They're
Oh,
just
yeah.
revisions. So everything that's in there that's still legal and law binding, like you still can't go out and ethnically harass someone regardless of the policies under review.
And as a part of that package, this package of harassment, I mean, I would put this cyberbullying one in there too, like 238. And, because we're supposed to be reviewing this every 3 years anyway, so we're a year behind on this one. I guess the one question I had on here is, this policy in particular talks about student-on-student cyberbullying. It doesn't address staff on student, volunteer on student, administrator on student, administrator on administrator. This specifically just says a bullying situation occurs when one student repeatedly makes comments, gestures, and acts to maintain perceived power over another student.
Yeah.
But
Frankly,
bullying,
I think the bullying issue has at this point legally only been limited to student
well,
issues.
I'm just saying though that
It changes to harassment.
we had a situation just 4 months ago where a member of the staff was bullying a student. You know what I mean? Maybe that's harassment.
It
but
does. It
was
falls under-
happening.
Right.
It was happening online, and so.
And not just one student, a few other students
Well,
as well.
I'm just saying that I brought this up at that time, saying, look, this needs to be addressed because it says student on student, and so literally someone could say, well, your policy doesn't apply.
Well, actually, but I think the point she made is very important. Once it goes to a staff, it falls immediately under unlawful harassment. That's where it's covered. Bullying, the way the state asked us to formulate bullying policies were
But
for student issues.
If you look at harassment, it's harassment based on ethnicity, sexual orientation, this, that, the other thing. It's not. When you take a look at it, there's a gap here. So you can harass somebody. You can't harass somebody based on these specific categories: religion, something else, blah 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 blah. But this person was harassing another person because they were students. That was the specific point of the attack, right? And so it wouldn't fall under quote unquote unlawful harassment under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Human Relations Act, or anything else. It would have fallen under a bullying and cyberbullying policy, but it didn't apply to staff members. It only applies to students. So there's a gap there. I mean, we as a board took care of it on our own, but in this particular case, I think that needs to be addressed as part of the cyberbullying policy. And I did mention this to Subers at the time it happened, and he said, you're right, we need to take care of it. So when you guys are reviewing
There
this,
needs to be another one under the staff
whatever
section.
section you want to put it
Right.
under,
Then we need to model it. Yeah, I see what you're
We
saying.
need to replicate it.
replicate it into
Different.
4 different other sections,
Right.
the 3s,
Yeah.
4s, and 5s, however you want to do it. You can still, heck, I sat on this board and I watched one particular board member try to bully other board members, okay? It's not limited to
Students.
and administrators. It happens at this level too. And so
It's a good suggestion.
Maybe there should be a separate one saying, and board members. You know what I mean?
That's why we asked you to pass a board of code of
Code of
conduct.
conduct is a different thing altogether, but I'm just saying that we had board members who were intimidated by a certain individual, and that kind of stuff needs to stop too. And it has to start up here. So, having said that, I'm happy to, thank you for allowing me to continue.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
We get this sort of off the table, and you can come back to us with revisions
Absolutely.
next time, so we can.
Absolutely.
All right.
Do you have consequences though attached to these? Like, I'm just
That's what happens.
Right.
No, I mean, yes, we do, because there's disciplinary action that happens as a result of these investigations. And
Are you talking about for staff?
For
Staff,
everybody,
students.
well, we know what the consequences are attached to each.
That's probably within, that's a good question. I'm assuming it's within the discipline code.
Because we're back where we started, if there's no clearly.
Well, what happens, if you read these things, it says what the administration has the discretion as to what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you go to the other policy, which talks about suspensions or expulsions for students. Staff has a whole different things, whether they're suspended with pay or suspended without pay or fired or whatever the case may be. And then there's
really defined.
and there's a whole procedure for appealing those things. So if the student gets expelled, they have the right to appeal. And
Should some of those be looked at though, because I
Oh,
think
we'll get
some
to
of
all
them
of
should be taken more seriously than what was previously reported or documented. For instance, I sent you guys all like an article I was reading about how the Supreme Court, it was a mandatory sensitivity training for New Jersey public schools. The Supreme Court ruled.
Yes, I saw
Yeah,
that.
I just saw it right now.
For stopping bias-based harassment.
Somebody gave me a copy of that earlier today.
Really, so the email you were sent, just scroll down a little bit because it kind of starts way down in the text. But it's really interesting. I think it's really good to, if we feel like some of these penalties are too,
Lax.
thank you, and I think some of them really are. Because, the systems are looking at all of this now. This is
Right.
It's crime.
Well, it's a
crime. And I think the punishment doesn't match the crime.
Right.
So we
If
need to
you're
look
not
at
worried
that.
about the punishment.
Since we're revising this, it's a
Right.
crime.
It's not a deterrent.
The Supreme Court has said about these crimes.
Sure, look, I'm in agreement with you, but on the other side of the coin, I think that's when we're going to have to get our solicitor involved because there's a whole issue of due
Yeah,
process,
yeah.
and we have to respect due process. So if someone's falsely accused or whatever, they have to have their day in court, and the whole thing. Or if it's a first-time offense, we have some contractual issues that we have to deal with. If it deals with a teacher, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, well, this is the first time it happened, so maybe you can fire, maybe you can't. I don't know.
First time it happened, depending on what happened,
But look,
right?
yeah.
It
As
depends
far as
on-
I'm concerned,
It depends on the crime. I mean, you're not gonna, if it's something that's, yeah. I don't know if that would apply.
I understand what you're
If the
saying.
student's saying, I've been
Yeah.
inappropriately touched or raped, I mean, that's not gonna apply, so you gotta look at all of that.
oh, sure, look, if somebody's convicted of a crime, I mean, absolutely, they're,
The
Yeah.
student
I
code of
understand
conduct
right.
for the secondary students does put a level to sexual harassment, racial slurs, ethnic intimidation. So it's all delineated out, and then there's a menu which actually starts with suspension and goes on down.
Right, but we have level 4 here already that we're aware of, and the level 4 was just a suspension. And I think we need to go back and look at some of that, and some of those level 4s should probably be expulsion. When we're talking about weapons in school, I don't think that should be a level 4. I mean, I don't think that it's a level 4, but should it be suspension?
I
Should
think
it
we,
be expulsion?
we'll have to look at all of those things when we get to them.
And yeah, that'll be a policy we'll be looking at. I'm not sure what number it is, but we'll be getting there at some point.
Well, and there's a lot of
Suspension and
details
expulsions
that
is
don't get printed that you have
Yeah.
to consider
Right.
in
Oh.
every case.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, it's 9. What time is it? 9.
Almost 10.
Meeting adjourned, 9:50.
Thank you.